Hello, everyone, and welcome to the LFC Roundtable podcast. This is the podcast where we break down everything from the feeds. I'm your host, Taran Armstrong, and today I have the regular A-team with me today. I'm so glad to have you guys back. How you doing, Melissa?
I feel like I'm not prepared yet to be friendly and start a podcast. I'm so heated after watching the feeds right now. I'm so flustered. I don't even know. I'll have to pull myself together. Get some composure.
We had a delayed start today because there was a big house meeting / argument as we were starting the podcast. We decided to wait that out a bit. We'll see if it continues as we start the podcast here, but we are going to see getting some live reactions from it. Brent, how you doing? You're joining us today.
Happy to be here. Nice to see everybody.
Yes, and Alex, how you doing? Feeling better?
Woo!
Yes.
Woo.
Yes. Hey, Melissa's not lying. She was freaking out. It's unbelievable. She's throwing her headphones around. She was trashing her room. It was crazy.
It was fun watching feeds on Google Hangout with you guys for the last 10 minutes.
Yeah.
All right. So we'll be live every Monday night to talk about what's been going down on the feeds. We have a chat room open on RHAP-ups.com. You can send in questions to me at Armstrong Taran on Twitter. Let's do a quick recap of the week to get into this big fight. We have Paul as HOH. Jessica immediately tries to claim that this temptation is going to keep her safe. Paul decides to call her bluff. Nominates Jessica and Cody. They're on the block. Paul wins veto. He pulls down Jason, who lost the temptation competition and was the third nominee. And ultimately, this plan is Paul wants to try and convince Jessica not to use the temptation, the halting hex, to save both her and Cody, to sacrifice Cody in order to get herself further in the game. She makes a deal with him. Okay, I'll be safe for 2 weeks. You guys will take out Alex for me if I don't use the halting hex. Ultimately, today, Jessica has basically come out and say, I'm going to use the halting hex. Come at me all you want, Paul. And that led into this big fight that we just witnessed. Brent, how do you feel about all this?
I feel uncomfortable and yet hopeful, because I am uncomfortable because the plan to try to get Cody to self-evict and be terrible to him and all of this house meeting BS is... It's not what I love Big Brother for. I mean, I love Big Brother for occasional fights and feistiness and feeds and interesting stuff. But when it gets to a point where it feels like people are being bullied, and I don't use that term lightly, but it kind of feels like that to me, then I don't feel great about that. On the other hand, some things are coming out because it's a chaotic environment right now, and I feel like things are being said that will eventually open people's eyes if they haven't already. And I feel like that some people are already starting to wake up just a touch. I don't feel like it's going to happen right now because Cody and Jessica are still in the house and probably will be for another week when Jessica uses the hex, most likely on Thursday. But aside from that, I do feel like that some people's true personalities are shown. Hi, Raven, I see you. And I don't think that things are going to remain on their general course for much longer.
Yeah, basically what happened today was after the veto ceremony, Jessica caught Raven, or at least saw Raven talking with Kevin and Jason, I believe, and she assumed that they were talking about her because she entered the room, and it seemed as though they changed the conversation.
Which they were, by the way.
Melissa's very angry. Jessica confronted Raven about it, who denied that she was talking about Jessica and got very upset because Jessica and then Cody, who joined in later, were saying that she was shady and that everyone was acting shady. Raven runs upstairs to talk to Paul and co. And Paul is he's like, oh, let's go down and why is Raven crying?
And she wasn't crying. She wasn't crying.
He tells her to start crying. She does start crying. She later says that she was initially faking it and then got actually upset. And so they kind of come at Cody and Jessica like, oh, you made Raven cry. You guys are bullies. And they come up with this new plan now that Jessica seems like she is going to use the halting hex to really just get under Cody's skin so much that he snaps and punches Josh or Paul, and he has to be booted from the house or just self-evicts. They're legitimately talking about okay, how can we really get under his skin? Christmas comes up with the idea, let's question his military experience. They're really trying to dig deep here and get him rattled, and Melissa is just not having it.
It is so horrible. Their plan is to rile Cody up to get his true colors of as a bully to show through. So their plan is to bully him. It is absolutely horrible. You don't do that. It's just awful. It's not, first of all, it's like a horrible plan. I mean, now we see what Paul is like when things aren't going his way, which is horrible and also very reckless with his gameplay. He's not doing a good job at all. They're just getting everybody riled up. I mean, like, Raven out there yelling, yeah, she can't put that back in the bottle. She is not the Southern Belle Charmer sweetheart that everybody thought she was. You know they're going to show that on the show. That America is not going to like that at all. I mean, America's already sympathetic towards Jody as like a showmance or whatever. They're sympathetic to them. You can look, as I keep tabs on it, I look on the Facebook comments because I know that's where the casuals hang out, and they all are saying, we like Cody. Cody's the only one who's going against Paul. Paul's little minions are falling behind. So everyone's kind of on the same page with this one. At least I think so. I mean, I am by far team Jody. The other people are horrible. They're showing their true colors and showing how horrible of people they are. It's just awful. I mean, Matt at least had some sense to be like, guys, this plan is not good. This is not good. To get someone who's like in the military who has killed people before to snap. That's a terrible idea. It's so awful.
I'm so glad to be talking to you again, Melissa. I'm loving it. So
yeah, I
Alex,
could keep going, but I'm gonna like let other people speak.
Alex, you mentioned your boy Matt, who has been kind of the voice of reason in all of this. How do you feel about how Matt's been playing this?
I mean, it's good. You know, like everything he's done up to this point has been nothing. So that of itself at this point of the game is fine. And then, you know, his position is fine. And then, yeah, I mean, you want to be measured and composed. Like the best people playing the game right now are going to be like Matt and Kevin and Jason, just because they're not involving themselves in this ridiculous nonsense. Like Paul is continuing to take from the Pauly playbook. And this is the part where Pauly decides to rattle her and it doesn't go well, surprisingly. Only this time it feels even ickier to watch because not only is it one person trying to rattle somebody, but you've got the whole house. Like it's just a pack mentality, like a bunch of hyenas like picking at the weak one kind of thing. And that's weak, man. Like, you know, it's just basic psychology. That's like fear and cowardice manifested into, you know, negative, crappy behavior. Like nobody's here for that.
Yeah,
and that's what we're witnessing.
Oh, really quickly about Matt. Like I was gonna say I love Matt. I don't love Matt, but I like the fact that he had some anger today for the first time, like that I have seen, because you know after this plan started to get put in motion, they left the storage room, and then Matt was there talking with Christmas, and he was voicing some concerns, but it felt like he was lecturing Christmas a little bit, or at least Christmas felt that way, and Christmas. Girl has an anger problem. I just want y'all to know. Like, I don't know what's up with her, but she snaps at, like, she goes from 0 to 100, like, in no time whatsoever.
Yeah, she was telling Raven, like, you move out of the way. I'm getting out of this room. Like, don't block the door. It was like, whoa.
She's not even mad at Raven right now. She's like, well, tell your boyfriend to stop lecturing me. And I love it. And it's not exactly great gameplay, but I love it that Matt is like, well, I'm not going to apologize to her, but when she comes to me and apologizes for her tone or changes her tone, then maybe I'll talk with her. So I like the fact that there's friction. Never in my life have I seen a week that everyone continually refers to as a dud week. That's what they're calling it in the house. It's just given us amazing stuff. Like, I mean, like so many things are happening, and yet it feels like none of it's going to matter.
Yeah. Well, I'm finishing up a House rewatch, the show House, and I feel like maybe that's where Christmas's anger is coming from. She's got a bum leg now. She's got pain, so she slashes out just like House. Yeah.
That was a really deep pull. I was like, what? Like, what house are you talking about?
Yeah.
I'm like, okay.
So yes, what we just witnessed was the entire house essentially pulling Jessica out of the Austin Powers room and just berating her, really, with Raven and Alex leading the charge. I know.
Why?
Melissa, like, as we were watching this, Melissa, you were just like, they're the worst.
They're the worst. They're literally the worst. I cannot wait until Paul targets Alex inevitably in like 2 weeks, 3 weeks. She's going to be dumbfounded. She's going to be like, what? I thought we were allies till the end. No, Alex, he doesn't care about you. He doesn't care about anybody except for himself. That's the point. Alex is an idiot. Like I was actually like high up on her at the beginning. I was like, you know what? Like she's the one person who will go against people and who has a mind of her own and who wants to play the game. I was so impressed. And now look at her. This is garbage. And Raven, like, why? She doesn't have a dog in this fight. Why is she in there?
Because
like, why is she in there?
She needs to be.
Because, like, this
well, that's the thing. It's like when there's commotion, like she's not going to be like the one to stir up commotion initially, but if a lot of commotion is going on, she wants to get airtime, and she knows that's making TV. That's my guess. Anyway, that's my best guess.
Doesn't it feel like that? It feels like she hasn't been getting enough attention lately. That's what it feels like with Raven. Like, Raven hasn't been getting enough attention, so this is her lashing out. Like, I mean, to me, for those people watching, I'm just going to put it on the line right now, y'all. I am not Team Raven. I am Team, like, Raven Exposed Party. I'm not going to say squat about it on the feed, on the show right now, but I don't like her. I think she's fake as you know what, and I can't wait for people to see this, that this is, to me, this is the true Raven. Because Raven talking like this right now, her accent starts to go away when she starts yelling at people like this, which I think is hilarious.
Calling him the C word. She was calling Jessica the C word.
No, she gets a total pass from that because she has 2 hearts, y'all. Did you know she has 2 hearts? Oh, yeah.
Well, she says the C word with a charming accent.
Okay. Point taken, Alex.
Yeah, Raven
goes a long way.
Raven really coming out of nowhere with a lot of aggression, and I don't remember what podcast it was. It might have been on Friday that we talked about just like it's not the best look for Raven to be so aggressive. And man, like watching her do like essentially go off on these people. I mean, we still have Josh banging pots and pans, going da 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 da, and it's still Raven who really comes off the worst because she's just so vile in some moments.
Yeah. The things that she's saying, like Josh is like, okay, Josh is being ridiculous. He's yelling, like singing. He's kind of just banging pots and pans. Like, okay, none of that is like that big of a deal. Like, it's annoying. It's stupid. It's honestly just really bad to watch. Like, it's not fun. It's just annoying. But Raven is like yelling personal stuff at them and saying like, you've come at me. Like, this is what you get. And she's sitting there like calling him the C word and like, it's just not a good look at all for her, especially because Cody and Jessica, to my annoyance, in the beginning of the season, were like, we want to give the game to Raven. We love her. She's so sweet. She deserves it. If anything, I want to hand the game over to her on a silver platter. And I was getting annoyed by that. And Raven sitting here like attacking them when they were nothing but nice to her the whole time.
Yeah, earlier today, Jessica had a conversation with Paul where she was essentially calling him out for being a mastermind and being in control of everyone and putting him up to Jason, who made a speech against Cody in the veto ceremony. She said that Paul put him up to that. She said that Paul puts Josh up to torturing them and that he doesn't step in to stop them. And Paul was like, what are you talking about? I don't do any of that. I'm not involved at all. And just now I'm seeing on the feeds, Josh is asking Paul in front of Jessica, I think I should confront Elena and Mark. And Jessica goes, oh, look, Josh is asking permission to do something. So yeah, there's still a lot of conflict happening. And Jessica's really trying to point out that Paul is in charge of everything. And she is very, very much on to what he is doing. He's trying his best to deny it and keep people distracted from it. But Paul is in a lot of trouble if Jessica or Cody wins this issue.
Is that his best? Is that really his best? I think he could be trying better.
I think this could be the exposure of Paul. I absolutely think Paul could get exposed.
I agree. That's what I want to say.
That's the one good thing.
I think this is Jessica's best play, is really digging into people that you are following Paul. You all are zombies. The fans hate you right now. That's why I got the temptation. Josh is incredulous that Jessica got the temptation. He's like, how am I banging pots and pans and acting like Ika Wong and this bitch gets the temptation? How did that happen?
You'd think that would be telling, though.
You think for 2 things. Number one, I feel like that's her best play, is because when you start calling people out for following Paul, then I feel like they're going to start defending themselves, and people will say things that they shouldn't say in open company about who they're aligned with, who they take orders from, who they trust, that sort of thing. Number 2, I can't imagine that Paul, having played before, doesn't understand that even though he feels like these people are the enemy, and maybe he's so blinded by that he can't see, this is not a good look for it to be 10-on-2. He knows the fans are going to align with the 2 because we feel like that everyone else is just being a bully in this situation. Finally, really quickly about Josh, I really think it was telling what Alex said, our Alex, not the one on the show, said previously before the podcast started, when you said that Josh doesn't really have a personality of his own. He just mimics things that other people do in the house. And I would like to talk more about that. Sorry, I unloaded a lot of stuff there, but I want to talk.
Oh, go, Alex, go ahead and elaborate on that.
Yeah, well, no, I just thought it was really, you know, I tweeted something about it earlier because after the veto meeting, Josh said something about like Cody doesn't even have a personality. And I'm just like, you know, that is so ironic coming from Josh, because I think Josh is, you know, he's a young guy. He doesn't really know who he is yet. Right. And so I want to give him a little bit of a pass. But like, to me, he's the greatest example of someone with no personality, because he's literally going in there not knowing who he is to a degree where he's just like, I'm going to do this because I've seen people do this in the past, and this is something people like. And he's missing a lot of, you know, pages in the book. Like, he's just kind of reading the pictures of how to build the thing without reading the step-by-step instructions. And then his bookcase is like upside down and backwards. So like, it's not really ideal. I mean, you know, like, you know, Dick did that like the one time with purpose, trying to get the target onto himself. Like, Josh doesn't know why he's doing things. He just thinks like, oh, this is fun. I'm going to make him crack or something. It's like, dude, what you're going to do is like make all these people never want to reward you to win this game ever. Like, Josh is like dead by doing all these things and like undermining his own credibility to such a degree that like, it's already hard for me to see any scenario where he could pull out a win. Cause like, who has any respect for the way he's playing this game?
Josh keeps having these moments with Paul that are like that sketch from that Mitch and Webb look where they're both wearing like Nazi uniforms and
are we the baddies?
He goes, yeah, are we the baddies? Josh keeps going to Paul and being like, are we the bad guys here because they're the underdogs and they want the temptation, we're being jerks, are we bad here? And Paul's just like, nah, I don't think so, I think we're good, don't worry about it.
Yeah. We're not the bad guys. Yeah.
Yeah. The thing I feel like Jessica and Cody are missing out on here is that instead of focusing on Paul, because they have Paul dead to rights here, instead of focusing on that, they are kind of using a shotgun. They're using this broad approach and they're attacking Raven. They're attacking, you know, Christmas at some points. They're attacking Josh. They're attacking Alex. Instead of being like, guys, you should join our side. We like you. It's Paul that's in control. You need to be worried about Paul. They're being like, Paul, you're the worst, but Raven, you suck, and Josh, you suck, and Alex, I hate you. And it's ruining their chances of getting these allies because nobody's going to turn on Paul, despite the fact that they think he's a mastermind, if they feel like, well, I can't work with Jessica anyway because she hates me and she keeps coming after me, and I can't have that in the house.
Right.
And that's their problem. Cody tried to talk to Jason earlier today, and he actually made a little bit of headway because he was nice to Jason. He was like, look, dude, I liked you when we started. We came into this house. I feel like we're kindred spirits. I want to work with you. The problem is that Paul is in control, and that hit the right buttons for Jason because that's what Jason has been saying all along. And Jason went to Alex like, man, is Cody talking truth right now? Should we be listening to him? And of course, Alex was like, absolutely not, because, and she said this herself, Jessica hates me. Jessica hates us. We can't do that. We can't work with them. So, I mean, it's frustrating watching them as underdogs, having the right like idea about what Paul is doing, but being completely unable to push the right buttons to get people to actually join their side.
Yeah, I feel like they're fans.
You don't have to like someone to vote with them.
Also, the problem is that Alex is completely unreachable. There is no possible way to get in with Alex because she's an idiot and she cannot like just put aside personal beef and just play the game the way it needs to be played. She's an idiot. I used to love her, but I'm just so angry with her. I'll probably love her in like a couple weeks, but like right now, I'm pissed.
No, that's okay though. That's okay. You see, people always criticize me for being a hypocrite, and I'm like, you know what? I'm like team hypocrite because sometimes you like people in the house, and then other times you love them, like or you hate them, and it just goes back and forth. You know, I mean, like that's what happens when you're a fan of Big Brother. Taran, I really agree with what you said about Cody and Jessica. I feel like that Jessica, having watched so much Big Brother, and she has watched more Big Brother than a majority of the house right now. Okay, she at least knows a little bit of history. I feel like they're acting like fans because that's how we feel right now, where we're all like, you suck and you suck and you suck. Well, it's like Melissa, like everybody sucks right now, whereas they really should be acting like players in the game. It reminds me of sort of like Karen last season on Big Brother Canada 5, where she was acting like a fan in the house, and Alex was criticizing her because she was acting like a fan and not an actual player in the game right now. I feel like that Jessica and Cody, to a certain extent, are also doing that, where they're sort of like firing like missiles left and right at people who they're just generally irritated with, but they have no real plan of how to move forward other than to win HOH or pray to God Mark wins it and somehow keeps them safe.
Yeah, that's okay. The older I get, I turned 30 on Saturday. The older I get, I realize there's two kinds of people in the world. There's just like people who are hypocrites and have no idea, and then there's the rest of us who are just fully self-aware of our hypocritical tendencies.
All right. Well, let's talk about Paul's game here. He wins this HOH this week. He goes after Jessica and Cody, despite them having the temptation, partly to call their bluff, partly to flush this temptation, and partly because he thinks maybe he can get them to not use it. And he also wins the veto. And he's really just going aggro this week, like totally full on. We've been talking like, is he Derek? Is he Pauly? In previous weeks, he's been a little more Derek-esque. And this week, he's definitely more Pauly-esque. Do we see this week as Paul's downfall? We talked about it a little bit, but especially the competition wins and the way he's been like strutting about around the house. It really feels like this is not looking good for Paul, right, Alex?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely could be. And I think, to me, the most illuminating thing I've heard all season, and really this week in particular, is, Jessica's woke right now. She's figured this out. I mean, it's interesting how she's managed to really get a good grasp on everything without people really cluing her in, just based on reads and kind of, I mean, sometimes when you're in danger, maybe your senses pick up a little bit and you start paying better attention to what's really going on around you. But, I mean, I loved what she said about her plan to potentially nominate like Alex and Raven and then go after Paul later in the week, like with a possible backdoor, because like that is the key to undoing Paul's grip right now. I mean, really he's essentially juggling these two alliances. I mean, he really is at the end of the day. They are a pack unified against Jessica and Cody, and he's managing to keep them together with like a rubber band, but that rubber band's going to snap, and then it's very clearly two clusters. And if you can make Paul, you force him into a position where he's having to promise his vote to both clusters, like that's really where he gets very, very clearly tripped up. It's very hard for him to wiggle out of that spot, it seems to me.
Yeah, Brent, how have you felt about Paul's game this week?
Terrible, not fun to watch. I can't stand it. I mean, look, I had to listen to Rob last night, and he was like, well, you have to give Paul credit because he at least is giving us something. He's at least giving us team good feeds. He's doing something. He's being funny. He's great in the diary room. But again, it's just, I take that point to a certain extent. But it does feel like to me like it's so oversaturated by this point that I can't appreciate any of the subtleties of it because it's just all in my face and that's all I see on the show. And I'm trying, as a feed watcher, I try to ignore the TV show because at the end of the day, like I feel like it's a feed show more than anything, but it is a TV show and that's the only way it's going to make money. And I watch the TV show and it's just all about Paul narrating, Paul being part of this, even when he's not a part of competitions, he's talking. It's all about his strategy in the diary room. Every outro, like, the little things that they say at the end of the episode always have Paul in them. And I'm just so sick of listening to him right now. He's a great game player when well, let me put it this way. He's a fun game player when he has his back against the wall and it's like him and Victor against the world. That's when we love Paul the most. But when Paul is like, in control of the entire house, it's just not fun for me to watch because I've seen that story before with Derek and he did it better.
Yeah. Well, again, this is sort of like an interesting thing to look at because Derek was never in this position, right? Like, for all that we can say about how Paul has been mishandling this week, he really, got screwed by Cody coming back in, by Jess having the halting hex, and he got a lot of help in the beginning of the season. I'm not saying it's unfair, but he was screwed in a lot of ways. And if Cody hadn't come back, if Jessica hadn't had this halting hex, we probably would see a much smoother ride for Paul, and maybe wouldn't have even seen any of these mistakes come out, which is potentially a similar situation to what Derek might have experienced if he had actually had to experience some.
Here's the thing.
No,
I feel like
not the same extreme, but I'm saying we never got to see that from Derek.
I know. I feel like Paul's problem right now is that he's just trying to micromanage and control everything. So the one time that things don't go his way, Jessica has a power that Paul cannot compete for. He cannot win. He cannot some way take it away from her. He can't control it. So he gets pissed about it, and he tries to come up with a plan to manage it. And when it becomes unmanageable anymore, he just explodes. That's what I see happening this week. I don't understand, especially after he won HOH. I do not understand the veto win. Maybe it doesn't matter, you guys. I don't know, but it just puts more of a target on him. The one thing I wanted to ask you guys really quick was the whistle nut speech in the veto meeting today. Jessica asked Paul not to say anything about Cody, and they shook hands on it. But the thing I missed was, I know Jessica was accusing Paul of having fed whistle nut the lines in his speech. Did he actually do that? I have to believe that that's what happened, right?
I don't think he fed him the lines, but I do think he definitely put Jason up to it. He told Jason to make a speech against Cody. And Jason wasn't super high on that idea. He wasn't really happy about Paul telling him to do that. But I guess ultimately he ends up doing something similar. And so, yeah, if Jessica asks Jason about it, I believe Jason will tell her that Paul put me up to it, and then Paul will be exposed yet again to Jessica. Not that it matters, because she already doesn't believe him, but I do believe that he will be outed if that happens. Melissa, how do you think that Paul is doing? If you were grading Paul's week this week, if you graded his game up to this point and then this week, do you think he's just really fallen off?
I think he's doing a terrible job this week. I think that even before, I guess, like today even, I was impressed with Paul, and I was thinking to myself, like, he's doing a good job. Like, we don't like it because it's boring, like, to have one person controlling everyone else, but he was doing a good job, and he was doing what he needed to do. But this week, Derek would never do what Paul is doing this week. Even if his back was against the wall and there was just adversity, he wouldn't do this. The best thing that Derek would do is, first of all, he'd minimize his own target. Second of all, he'd make people think that they were making their own decisions and that he wasn't controlling them. He was just like a sounding board. But really, he was ending up like roundabout way, making them think that they came up with this idea and then executing it, whatever Derek wanted them to do, without them knowing that's what he was doing. Paul is just telling people exactly what they need to do, forcing people to say certain things and do certain things, and micromanaging every single thing that's going on. He's not giving people the leeway to do anything on their own, or at least think they're doing something on their own. And also this whole bullying thing, like, I'm sorry, it is bullying. Like, I know that that's like a word people throw around, but this is bullying, to have everybody bring up his military service and try and get him to punch someone and all this. It's just not cool. And Derek, I don't think Derek would ever tell the whole house to gang up on two people and bully them. I don't think that would ever happen. I don't think Derek would tolerate it. I mean, especially because his DR personality is like Mr. Nice father figure guy. So there's no way that he would let that happen. I just think that Paul is just off the rails.
I have to say, I don't really feel great about them. And when Melissa says that they're bringing up his military experience, they're questioning it. Is it authentic? Like, are you lying about this? Did you really do the things that you said you do? What you did? And
they're not doing it because they don't believe that he's actually in the military. They know that gets to people. Christmas said that if people in the military, if you question their service, then that's a trigger for people.
Right. That's probably why I'm having such a visceral reaction to this, because I mean, Cody has killed people before, right? So, like, you think that you actually want, I mean, here's the thing. At the end of the day, whether you agree with what he did or not, he fought for our country. And so when you bring personal things like that into the game, it just, it gets it to a point. I feel like I'm Melissa, because I'm so angry. I'm searching for words, and I can't find the words to express my anger, where I'm just like, I don't think it's a good thing.
And on top of all of this,
okay. I just quickly, I want to be clear that I'm not saying that this is what Derek would do. I'm saying that I'm curious to, like, we're seeing what happens.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah,
seeing what happens.
Recognized Zach pretty good that one time, but he spun it in the DR pretty good.
Yeah.
I'm getting some people telling me in the chat, and I'm seeing on the feeds right now, Cody is talking to Jessica about, Jessica's talking to Cody about walking. They're both talking about leaving the game right now. Cody's saying, if you want to walk, I will walk with you. Jessica's saying, it won't hurt my job. Staying might hurt my job. We might not get paid if we do this.
They won't let him do that. There's no way Big Brother lets them do that.
That's not how you win either. Like, beat these people at their own, you know what I mean? Just like stay stoic, wait till Thursday, and then drop that in their face. That's how you get your revenge. Like,
I feel like Jessica's best
better
plan
than that.
At this point, if she really wants to get them, she really should, she let something happen, fake a fight with Cody, go to Paul, say, I'm not going to use the hacks. Like, let's make plans. Like, enjoy the week, get to Thursday, drop it on them, and then win HOH. Like, of course, the last part's a little harder, but at least it's a better plan than what they're doing right now.
Yeah.
The other piece I really haven't seen anyone talk about that I think is kind of crazy in all this is that at the beginning of this season, we had someone leave for a PTSD related issue. Like, this is not only is this sensitive stuff, like, just in general, this is sensitive stuff relative to events that have already transpired this season. I just can't believe that kind of this is where we are.
I think that, like, I see the BB president in the chat saying production can't forcibly keep them. Look, I understand that, okay, honey. What I'm saying is they're not just going to listen to them say, oh, you want to walk? Okay, here's the door right here.
There's
like,
no way they'd let their biggest characters of the show, the biggest underdogs who everybody's rooting for, just walk out the door.
And just let two people walk out the door after they're already down a house guest. I mean, they're going to fight that.
No way.
I heard Jessica saying on the feeds. Yeah, I heard Jessica saying on the feeds earlier something about like how she, relays requests to production, but she feels like there's too many people back there and like it doesn't get relayed through proper channels and then feeds cut, which made me think that's pretty legit. So there's a lot of people back there is my point. And one of them, I assume, as far as we know, is someone who's clinically trained to talk you down from these moments. Right. And if they can't get them to stay in the house and use this power on Thursday that they have as a trump card, then you need to hire somebody else for that job because they're not earning their keep.
Yeah, there's a reason it's incredibly rare for somebody to self-evict. I mean, Megan, it was essentially the first person, and even that is sort of questionable given her status with PTSD. So, like, we've never really seen anybody just like walk completely for no legitimate medical reason or anything like that. Say what you want about how you feel about Megan, but they really push hard for you to stay in the game. I mean, they had Audrey in there for hours and hours. Like, they do not want to let you leave. That is not how they want their show to go. So this seems like a momentary weakness for Jess and Cody, and I doubt it's going to mean anything. I will say really quickly,
maybe the chat room, again, the BB president saying that she's wishing that they bluff them. Basically, they just go to production and say, look, we're going to walk, and to get them to shut this shit down. I mean, that may be their best strategy.
Which they should shut it down anyway.
I know.
This is too far.
I feel like production's kind of having it both ways, where they want the footage of this, but on the other hand, they're telling them in the diary room that they can't incite violence, that they can't start fights. But what do you call this stuff now? It just feels like you're talking out of both sides of your mouth.
I think it's despicable, but I actually have no problem with it. I feel like if where's the line? Like, I don't know where we draw the line on like maybe hate speech.
You don't have a problem with it, but you don't enjoy it.
But like, I hate listening to it. It makes me feel really icky and awful, and I wouldn't participate in it. But like, it's hard for me to then like quantify like what should be allowed in the game of Big Brother, because I do think like, I talk about like Russell Kairou's getting in Ronnie's face and making him want to quit as like a strategic ploy that he had available to him because he's a big, intimidating guy. Like, part of me does think that should be a play that's allowed. It's just particularly gross when we see everybody out of like cowardice, basically, just all jump in. And like, it's when these conversations actually come up about like, is there a point where we should have a line? Because this is like, it's pretty bad.
I hope that this whole feud or whatever, this whole thing, I hope it gets certain people to turn around and take a look at themselves and be like, oh shoot, I don't want to be part of this. Like, maybe Mark or maybe Elena or someone will be like, this is not what I wanted to be a part of. Like, I don't want to be associated with this side of the house. And then maybe that'll turn things around.
Well,
that's
Mark
like my only hope for this.
Mark and Elena would have to be brain dead at this point to not see what's going on. I mean, they were fighting with Jessica and Cody, but when Mark and Elena, Mark specifically did not say anything in defense of like Alex and Raven and Paul and Josh, when he didn't say anything, then they turned their fire on him. So it should be like, why really would he defend
them?
Right? It should be so evident to him and her. You are in trouble here. Your targets number 3 and 4. Wake up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's clear that the tactic to sort of like psychologically break somebody down is something that has been done before in the Big Brother house. I think the line is and should be when they're talking about trying to incite physical violence. They've been told they're not allowed to do that. I think production should have been a little more on top of that. They were allowed to talk about that for a long time. Before they got shut down. The whole plan and the reason Matt had an objection was, are we really going to try and get this guy who's killed people to snap on Josh? I don't want to see this guy bleeding all over the floor. This doesn't seem like a good
right. Can I just say really quickly, did you hear Christmas's response to that when Matt said, look, well, how would you feel if Cody just started punching Josh and literally tried to beat him to a pulp? She's like, well, then that would show that Cody doesn't have the discipline that he needs anymore. I'm like, so you're just like using Josh as a play toy in your game? Like, you don't even care about him?
Like,
it's
so horrible. And
she
Paul
broke her foot.
Paul is sitting there saying like, oh, Cody, you came in here and thought you could be a bully. Well, like, here's a taste of your own medicine. When has Cody ever been a bully to people? Like, even when he was in power and not fun to watch and just horrible, we all hated him. Like, he never like bullied people. He was nice to Alex. He was nice to Jason. He was nice to people. Like, maybe he didn't want to work with certain people and maybe he wasn't very nice to certain people, but he was never bullying people. He was never targeting people like that. It's just, it's totally uncalled for.
Yeah, he just played terribly. Like, that's all he did.
Yeah, but he wasn't bullying them. Like, he gave Josh like, when Josh came to talk to Jessica and Cody said, she doesn't want to talk to you. We both have nothing to say to you. Like, I guess Josh is taking that as bullying, and that's not. I mean, Cody was just very respectful. Like, look, we don't want to talk to you right now. Get out.
Yeah, we don't want to talk.
I don't want to go that far and say that he was respectful. I mean, he was very, very cruel to Josh and very aggressive to Josh.
I'm talking about in that moment, Taran. I'm just trying to isolate a couple moments here.
And he also did get in Paul's face earlier in the week.
Yes, he did.
Like, in a
but
very
it was
threatening
warranted.
way. And again, let's not say it's warranted. If we're going to criticize his behavior, we should criticize both sides. I'm not saying that it's equal, but let's not pretend that Cody is completely like an angel.
I don't think he's an angel.
Yeah, but you're equating Cody's behavior with the house's behavior.
Yeah, this is so different. When you get in a fight with someone, when you get in a fight with someone and you're like being aggressive with them, I don't mind that. That's not bullying. I don't think that's bullying. I think that is like aggressive and in a fight, but I think that specifically going after people who are not coming after you, who are literally just sitting in a room together and trying to bring up moments from their past, bring into question their military service, try and incite them to violence. Like, those things are not the same as like being in an argument with someone. Like, those are cruel.
Right. What I'm not saying that the behavior is equivalent. I'm saying that we shouldn't just act as though Cody has done nothing, because he is. I mean, the reason they're trying to incite this behavior is because they've seen it before and they want to incite it again. And that's why he got into an argument with Jessica in the first place, because Jessica was saying that it was unacceptable behavior on Cody's part. I mean, all of this is awful. It's immature. It's ridiculous. People are talking like trashy casts, like move over Big Brother 11, move over Big Brother 9. Like, this is ridiculous. And I tend to agree. Absolutely. Like, this is just absurd. This is not like the subtle Big Brother that I think a lot of us want to see.
The person in the chat who said that Paul has returned friendship to its BB6 levels of hate. Like, I was here for that comment, especially after we had April Lewis on the show last week. I was like, because she was talking about, I was just ahead of my time with friendship, like it was just but now, like, no, you don't want to be a part of it anymore.
Yes. All right.
Yeah, and I think it has been a bit of a sliding scale too this week in terms of like what Cody or Jessica do that like really outrages people and sets them off. Like earlier in the week, sure, it was like them, being confrontational and stuff like that, but like a lot of today came because Cody didn't say anything when he got nominated. That's his prerogative. He doesn't want to give a veto speech. Right, if he didn't have to give one, Big Brother would say, no, Cody, that's not allowed. You have to give one. They didn't do that. So he doesn't have to do that.
Right, we didn't even talk about that. I mean,
misplaced, right.
Right, that's what, when Cody was asked, like, I want to give the nominees a chance to say something for the veto ceremony, Cody said Jack. He said Jack, okay? And that's got, like, Josh took offense to that. He's like, don't you think America would have a problem with that? You're disrespecting America. I'm like, dude, I am so here for not having to listen to that BS. Like, come on.
It was, and then the whole Raven issue where they were like, you made her cry. And it's like, no, she is acting. She's acting like she does every single day on the feeds. She's
But we're talking about reality, but the house is talking about perception. I feel like that's why we're so upset right now.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I mean, I gotta say, like, as much as I'm loving the heated discussion, this is kind of the point in Big Brother where I usually get like, oh man, people are like really like emotional right now, and it's hard to be in conversations.
Are you talking about me and Melissa?
Yeah, excuse me.
Mostly people on Twitter, but a little bit you guys right now.
Well, no, I just want to. Look, here's the thing. I feel like that inherently I'm probably going to be a touch more sympathetic to Cody and Jessica because, as I said on Twitter last night, like it's not that I specifically love them. Although I do stan Jessica quite a bit. It's that they're sort of the placeholders for the people who are fighting the war. Like that could be anybody at this point. You could put Chicken George in there, and I'd be rooting for him if he was the one who was woke up against Paul. It's not specifically that I love them; it's that they're not drinking the Kool-Aid. That's why
they're the only ones who are like actually seeing what's going on.
Well, despite that, they have made a lot of poor decisions, especially this week, between Jessica telling Cody not to compete in the temptation competition, Jessica deciding not to talk to Paul about the details of her temptation, which could have potentially saved her from being on the block. And also, like their like I was saying, like their behavior where they have Paul dead to rights, but they're focusing on other people. Do we think that Jessica and Cody are going to finally at some point get on a correct page and start making correct decisions, because they just keep making the wrong ones over and over and over, right, Alex?
Yeah. Oh, they made terrible decision after terrible decision. Both of them botched their respective HOHs very, very, very drastically.
Yeah.
But as long as you just stand up and say the stupid thing on Thursday night, like, just don't botch that, man. So stay till Thursday. Here's all you have to do to get yourself back in the game with a shot. Not necessarily a great shot, but two people competing for HOH that at the very least, and maybe more. I mean,
maybe more. Yeah.
At the very least, that aren't going to go after you right away. So just ignore it, man.
Yeah,
like, if you can, just isolate and just. Yeah,
I have a question. Let me ask this question. What happens if Mark or Elena win HOH on Thursday? I mean, because it's a real possibility, specifically Elena.
Mark said he wasn't going to nominate them.
We haven't even brought up Elena so far. What, after she's seen all the events of today and this week, what happens? Where's her head at? I want to know about her, because I feel like she's an important piece.
Her reaction
is after Josh.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Josh is Mark's target. I think we can at least put that down in pencil.
Yeah, I think Mark goes after Josh, and I think Elena sticks with Paul. I really do. I think I don't think Elena is going to mind this blow up too much. I think that she's, and again, the problem is that she just doesn't like Cody very much. She doesn't feel like she can work with Cody, and she feels like she can work with Paul. She's trusted Paul all this time. She's already distanced herself from Mark. She doesn't want to be in an intimate showmance with him, and I really don't see her. I mean, I could see her potentially going after Alex, because that's been the plan. Like, so basically, what happened, if you haven't been following our updates, Paul made this deal with Jessica. He got everyone involved. He got everyone to say, we're going after Alex next week in order to get Jessica to not use the halting hex. And he didn't tell Mark and Elena that this was a lie. They believed it, and they were like, oh, yeah, we're good with that. We don't like Alex. We'll take her out. And as far as they're aware, that never really changed. Jessica didn't take the deal. Ultimately, it looks like she's going to use the halting hex. But I think Mark will probably put up like Alex and Josh, and I think Elena could potentially do the same. I think Elena wouldn't have a problem with going after Josh or Alex. Paul would certainly try to get in there and get her to go after Cody. Would he be successful? I think he probably could. I think he might be able to like throw in a like, okay, but we'll backdoor Cody if somebody gets the HOH. I think Paul might actually go for that. What do you think, Brent?
Yeah, I think that's probably how it's going to go. And that would be really terrible. I mean, I hate it when people win HOH and we're like dancing on the feeds like, oh my God, they won. Like when Alex won HOH and we're like, yes. And she's in the storage room going, I'm going to make a big move. And we're going, yes. And then she's like, I'm going to nominate Jessica. And we're like,
she's like the most disappointing person in the whole season.
Yeah, I know. She really is. I don't know. Really quickly about Mark and Elena, I do feel like Mark will never nominate Cody and Jessica, even if he's absolutely threatened with it, because I think he understands that he's the next person on the totem pole. I do agree with Taran, but I do think Elena, much to my chagrin, would probably do what Paul eventually wants. And if she believes that Alex and Jason are on the outs and Cody and Jessica are on the outs, she would have no reason to distrust Paul at that point. So I do feel like she would probably do what Paul says. Really quickly about Alex, I agree with Melissa that nothing is going to wake her up. I feel like she's going to be an idiot until the end. She's going to be like the person in Survivor Africa who just follows along and follows along and follows along until you're eventually cut. Like you're led to the slaughter and you're cut. You don't even really care. You're like, well, that was my best game. Yeah, okay.
I don't see how these people aren't seeing that the same thing is happening every week. They pick an enemy and then they turn the whole house against them and make them say, well, they brought this upon themselves, and then they kick them out. And every week it's a new person, and it's gonna be you. That's the thing. Yeah, how do they not know that the next week is going to be them? They all think they're like second in command. They all think they're right up there on the top of the totem pole, and they're not.
Right, who was the girl, Christine from BB16? What's her last name? Somebody help me. Anybody?
Correct.
Yeah. Where did she think she was? Where did she think she fit into the puzzle? And yet she followed along the whole way until she was just cut. And she didn't do anything all season. But I feel like she's like what Alex is right now, where she believes in the man. The man is Paul, and eventually she's going to get cut, probably in some double eviction where they don't have to deal with her.
Why Survivor
These
Africa?
those points in the season.
I don't know. That season always pissed me off.
Redemption Island.
Sorry. I was always
That's a good pull.
Well, Survivor Marquesas was the first time that the Lambs fought back. Like it wasn't like 9 people marching to the end to their deaths. So Survivor Africa irritated me because I kept waiting for people to wake up, and they would never wake up.
Yeah.
And finally, in Marquesas, they did. Okay.
Rest in peace, the general.
I think I think we've noticed something about the Showmances this season, especially like Showmances lately. It feels as though the Showmance stuff, I mean, people have gotten annoyed with it lately. It seems like it's gotten more and more prominent as time has gone on. And this season especially, I feel like this is the most Showmance-centric season I think we've ever seen, even more so than last year, where these people are legitimately more concerned with their showmance than they are with the game. Cody and Jessica, they care more about the relationship than the game, and they were just talking about walking from the game. Mark and Elena, or Mark at least, is certainly more invested in Elena, up until the point where she's like, stop being so invested in me. And Cody and Jessica were so enraptured with each other that they legitimately didn't even study for the veto competition. They were too busy, talking to each other. It seems as though we're getting a very, very showmance-centric, and from Cody of all people. Well,
can I just say something really quickly? I take your points. I really do. I do feel like the whole thing with is Jessica going to use the hex or not? Remember, she has to use the hex before the votes come in, and she stupidly exposed that to Paul. So Paul now understands. In fact, I'm pretty positive that if she doesn't use the hex on Thursday, they're going to vote out Jessica.
Yeah,
not
because
Cody. Right, and why
rid of
shouldn't
the
they?
hex.
Right, so can they get rid of Jessica and her power? So for the people who are like really worried about the fact that, is Jessica going to use it or not, she should have made a deal with Paul. Like, if you use the veto on me, I'll consider it. That's what she should have done.
Wasn't that what she was doing?
She tried to, yeah. And
she tried to. He pushed back. She didn't push hard enough, though. He's like, well, that would raise some red flags. Yeah. I'm like, well, if you want me to not use this power, you're going to have to do it then.
Right back.
She had all the cards, and she didn't do it.
Yeah, we talked about it this morning. She has all the leverage, and she let Paul dictate the terms. Right. And even just before this big blow up, she was still considering not using the hex. She was saying to Cody, "Look, I'm going to ask you the night before and the morning of, and if you want me to not use it, I won't use it." Which is just insane.
Yeah, it's insanity because she has to use it before. Like, I really think her own self-preservation at that point is going to kick in. Like,
She's
you know what? I
may
may not want to use it, and I may want Cody to go home. But if I say I don't use it, and then the house gets to vote, they're going to send me home, and I'm not going to make jury, and then Cody's going to be here by himself all pissed off. So she doesn't want that to happen. She's using the hex. Let's fast forward to Thursday.
Yes, and that is,
I think, Taran, you were pointing out that this cast, is very kind of showmance focused, and it kind of unprecedented level. And I think another thing that really, I don't know if I can remember a cast where so many people we're fine burning bridges. It's like, what happened to the idea of going into the diary room and saying, I hate so-and-so, but I'm going to get their vote this week and then get rid of them next week. Like, what happened to that? It's so smart. It's so easy. Just rein it in a little bit, keep it together, and just, it's very frustrating because we know from watching a few seasons, that's the move. And yet nobody in there seems to get it.
Well, they didn't watch those seasons. I think that's mostly the problem.
Yeah, nobody's thinking to the weeks ahead. They're just thinking right now, I'm super pissed at this person and everyone's yelling. I'm going to yell too, and I'm going to get out all my grievances. Like, they need to think ahead. Think of the future. Like, you're going to need these people's votes at one point or another.
Yeah, well, I wanted to say something really quickly about Josh because I'm sorry, Taran. I just want because Alex brought this up earlier. I disagree. I think Josh can totally win the game at this point, and I also think that him doing like Master, what do you want me to do? Okay, I'll go do this. Paul tells him what to do. He goes to do it. Like when Josh is talking to us on the feeds and talking to like Julie Chen on the live show about if you're loyal, you give people your word, you do what you're supposed to. Like that's the way it really rewards you, Julie. Like I feel like that's what he's talking about here, where he does what Paul tells him to do, and I feel like he feels like he's safe because of it. So I know, like previously on a podcast, one of you, I think it was Taran, said that you think Josh might be one of the people to wake up eventually against Paul, but I don't really think that. Although I do agree with you that Paul might fear him because Paul is aware of the fact that America probably loves Josh. I don't know so much after this week, but America probably really likes Josh and his antics.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. I think Josh is more loyal to Christmas than he is to Paul, and I think if Christmas ends up turning on Paul, then we could see Josh follow suit with that. And then also Kevin and Jason tend to get into Josh's ear on occasion. Okay. I could see them putting some poison in there because they've talked about taking a shot at Paul as well. So a lot of people, there's a lot of rumblings now about taking shots at Paul all over the place, and he really, I mean, Alex is his best ally at this point in terms of loyalty, because she has really no better loyalty than him, and she's very
friendship,
she's very obedient. Yeah. All right, let's get into the Stockwatch. Let's go through these people. We'll start with Paul. We've talked a lot about Paul. I think we're all pretty solidly down on Paul from last week. He was in a bad spot last week. He did really well. We were already pretty down. I mean, we had the beta team in, and we were all pretty down on Paul's position just based on Cody coming back and Jessica having the halting hex. That's sort of coming through this week. And at least last week, he was still playing well. This week, it seems like he's a bit overplaying. So we're all pretty down on him, right, Melissa?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard because overall, I do think that Paul is playing a good game, and we can say all we want, like, oh, well, it's just because the people are idiots and they're following along with him. Like, that can't be the case for everyone. I just feel like I do think he's playing a good game. I think this week is not looking so good for him because he went a little too far. He didn't need to win the HOH. He didn't need to win the veto. He didn't need to, like, create all this drama, this uproar. He didn't need to, talk to Jessica about certain things, or like, I just felt like he was trying to do too much. And so this week I am down on him, but I do think overall, like, I do want to give him credit. I think that he is playing a good game. He's got everybody wrapped around his finger, and that's kind of impressive at this point. But overall this week down. Yeah,
I think I'd say the competition wins are the worst part of this week. I think the aggressiveness, the overplaying, that's bad to the fans. It's not as bad to the house. They're still pretty on board with him. They don't mind it, but it's the competition wins that are really going to bite him because people remember that stuff, and it really cements you as a big threat in the game. Whereas if you're just going off on people, that's not actually that bad. But these competitions, they really rack up, right, Alex?
Yeah, I mean it's pretty ridiculous, to be perfectly honest. There's a lot of frustration.
Like, oh, wait, I'm thinking, like, I know, I'm gonna spill a little tea. Like, you're watching the feeds right now. Like, I know what's going on. Yeah. That's when Alex is like, what did you just ask me?
I was listening to the question, but like it did kind of like he threw it to me, and then I was just like, oh, what was it again? Like, it's just one of those moments where it's just like, oh, we're gonna have to win this one. Yeah.
I've worked with you long enough, and I've had that face before where I'm like, I think it happened previously in this podcast where I was like, I think I heard a question, and I'm like, oh, you were talking to me, right? I'm sorry, I was watching the feeds right now. Like, what was your question again?
Hey, well, the first rule is to have an opinion. So
all right.
So the consensus of all of this is just like, what's going on here? What are people thinking? There's a lot of people that have a great opportunity here that they're kind of squandering, and it's frustrating for a lot of people. I will say that
Jessica said on the feeds earlier, she said, I don't want to give anybody what they want in this house. Walking does that. So I don't feel like that they're going to walk. I feel like I said, that ain't going to happen.
All right, let's move on to Jessica. Last week with the beta team, we talked about how Jessica was playing poorly last week. She, sent Ramses home instead of Paul or Josh or any one of her actual targets. But her position was great because Cody came back into the house. She had the halting hex, and she probably wouldn't even have to use it this week. Obviously, the play has continued to be poor, but the position is still okay. She's got, especially with this new temptation competition, they have a lot of chances to stay safe over the next coming weeks. That said, the play is still poor, and it's worse than we thought it was going to be last week. So I would say that she's slightly on the downhill here. Brent, you agree?
Yeah, I agree, unfortunately. Jessica, I love you, girl, but your instincts have been terrible in this game. Every time that I've wanted you to listen to yourself, you've listened to Cody and vice versa. It seems like I don't know how it's possible for you to be wrong all of the time, and yet somehow you have been. It's really just astounding. I think I worked with Taran on a previous podcast where he was like, it's actually sort of amazing that she has all this power and is still like boned it this badly, and yet she somehow did. And yet this week, even though I feel like that a couple of things worked in her favor, again, she wasn't able to take advantage of any of that. So I would have to I'd have to sell.
Yeah, Alex, you on board with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think she could go home this week. I don't think, I think she's in a very precarious position. And yeah, I mean, ostensibly she had more longevity and maybe not, like she needed some massive restructuring to put herself in a position for a win anyway. But with Cody gone, I mean, she might have certainly been able to reintegrate herself into something. And now, I mean, she's going to have to be the head of some new alliance. If there's going to be something to form, it's going to have to form around her because she is, I mean, very clearly off on an island that's solidified at this point. And she's not going to be able to get back in. She's going to have to draw people to her. That's the only way forward.
And I feel like she's not going to do that while Cody's in the house because she's too busy just like managing him and babysitting him and talking with him.
Is there at least some upside, though, if she does manage to, if her or Cody win HOH and take out Paul, does that open the game up enough that they have a shot, Melissa?
Oh, definitely. I mean, if they could get Paul out, then they totally have a shot because the people who are following Paul will have literally no idea what to do on their own. So they'll just be like wandering around totally lost. So if Paul goes out, I think she has a great chance. But I don't necessarily see Paul going out next week, even if they win HOH. But I think if they won HOH, something might be able to happen and they could pull something off. And also the fact that even if they don't win HOH, now with this like temptation competition, they have two chances to both of them be safe. By one of them winning the temptation competition and the other one winning the veto. They don't even need to pull each other off the block. Like they could both just be safe. So I think that they're not in a good position, but I think I'm just going to keep Jessica the same.
Can we talk about that really quickly? Like, is there a way, and I don't mean to interrupt your Stockwatch, but is there a way to even get Paul out at this point? I'm sort of like counting the votes, and I'm taking into account the fact that there's going to be a third person on the block. So if they had HOH, plus Cody, plus Mark, plus maybe Elena, plus the partner of another showmance that was on the block, maybe they could have like piled the votes together to get Paul out of the house, but it's close.
I think it's a two-step plan, like Jessica has outlined. I think you put up people where he's forced to alienate some people. I mean, you put up people who he's promised endgame things to both of them, and you put him in a position where he has to alienate more people. And then, at that point, you can change up the plan and, try to backdoor him. I think it has to be that kind of a move at this point.
Yes, and Wit in the chat says Paul versus Alex. I agree. I think that Alex is the best shot because I think Kevin and Jason would immediately abandon ship. They'd choose Alex over Paul. So that's two numbers instead of just one from a showmance. You've got potentially Mark on your side, as well as the other vote from either Jessica or Cody, whoever's HOH. That's a good solid base of votes right there. I think that's your best shot to take out Paul at the moment. But obviously, as Alex mentions, the best course of action is to get them to really just attack each other. I don't really have faith in Jessica and Cody to be able to pull that off, though. So put Alex up there. And given Jessica hates Alex, so she again might do the right thing for the wrong reasons and end up putting Paul and Alex up there.
How amazing that the two people you just can't stand on a personal level happen to be the two best people for your game. Isn't that nice?
Yeah, there you go. All right, let's move on to Cody, who last week was obviously up from being out of the game, but has he gone up or down since last week? Melissa, what do you think?
I think he's about the same, to be honest. They think that nobody wanted him to come back in the house. They didn't like him when he came back in. Now they just still don't like him, and he's still target number one. So I I think he's about the same. I don't see his game being any worse, and I don't think he played this week worse than he could have.
You agree with that, Alex?
It's tough. My initial thought is I want to say down because I feel like he's definitely done some things this week that, he reacted and they're trying to get you to bite. I mean, no, they're not right in what they're doing, but the best course of action is to not bite. You know what I mean? If you can rein it in, that's really the best. So I don't love the way he came back in the house. You want to try to get under the radar, and he's the exact opposite of that. There may not have been any opportunity for him to ever get back under the radar. So, there's really no fault there. But we didn't know that for sure when he was out of the house. And now we kind of know that definitively. So that's tough for him. But, I mean, it depends because, really next week, I mean, it really could. If him or Jessica or someone is able to win and take out Paul, I mean, it really does sound like from listening to people on the feeds before Paul was in the house, Cody really was kind of running things. And people were kind of treating Cody the way they're now treating Paul. So it would be very interesting to see if Paul left, if people would rally around Cody at that point.
No, I don't know about that. I mean, I hear what you're saying. I do think that before Paul came in, Cody was the man, but things have changed so much since then. And there's just certain people that would not work with Cody. Like Cody, more than anything, I feel like has gone down, and I would sell him again this week because he can't even have discussions. But when he gets, here's the thing. When other people in the house get upset, they're upset. When Cody gets upset with somebody, Cody's bullying them. Or Cody's being, he's being not even human anymore. It's like you're dehumanizing somebody to a point where he's no longer a player in this game. He's such an enemy. He's evil. We don't want him in the house. So I can do nothing but sell him on the Stockwatch at this point.
I'm going to go a different direction and say that I think he's actually in a better spot than he was last week. I think his chances are still very low. But since last week, we've learned about this temptation competition, which I feel like really just suits him. He'll be able to play that and get safety.
I keep forgetting that exists.
Yeah, exactly. It's very good for him because he can play it, potentially get safety. Even if he loses, that guarantees him a shot at the veto. So I think that is a benefit to him that he didn't have last week. Add on to the fact that Jessica now has a lot more heat on her. I actually could see people deciding to take out Jessica ahead of Cody if they had that option. Granted, we also found out that Cody is willing to throw his game away for Jessica, which I didn't know last week. And so he could potentially win the veto and use it on her and sacrifice himself. So that's not my favorite thing in terms of his chances. But I think I'm actually just a little bit slightly above where I was last week for Cody, just given the circumstances surrounding him, all the advantages he has to use in his favor. I think that he can last a few more weeks, give him a couple competition wins, start streaking it up, and all of a sudden you got Cody in the end game, which is a dangerous prospect. So again, I don't think his chances are great, but I think they're slightly better than they were before.
Yeah, but remember that temptation competition only lasts for 2 more weeks. So yeah. It's just okay, cool. All right.
Yes. All right. So let's move on to Alex. How do we feel like Alex is doing? I personally feel like she was doing all right in terms of where she was last week to this week until the deal with Jessica. What do you think, Brent?
Oh, I know I'm busted for reading up TTK. Sorry, who were you asking about?
Alex.
Okay,
Yes.
Alex. No, I mean, I feel like there's no change, so I would probably hold Alex at this point. Maybe slightly edge towards the buy if I wanted fancy fencerton about it, because I do feel like Paul realizes that she is one of his best advocates at this point, and she does do what she's told. She's willing to go up as a pawn. Paul's telling her before when they put this plan in place, the whole plan was, let's target Alex. So Paul was telling Alex, it actually would be better if you don't win HOH because we might need to use you as a pawn. And she's like, okay. She's such a loyal soldier. I feel like Paul has to see that at this point. If Paul is safe in the game, I feel like Alex is always going to be safe too.
Yeah, Alex, what do you think?
We talked about it, Alex, a bit this morning. I think I'm with you that once your name is out there, that's a dangerous thing. I mean, with a group conversation like that, a lot of people are in on a discussion of using Alex in a very dangerous way that Alex was not in on. And I think that's always risky. And moving forward, that, should be something to worry about. There's definitely truth to what Brent's saying too. I think ultimately I have to be down. Just the more I learn about Alex, the less faith I have that she can actually win this game. I mean, I just see a lot of lack of understanding about how positioning and other things affect the way this game plays out. And I mean, she just, she's talked about how she has no she really just doesn't understand how Nicole could have won this game without making big moves. And there's just, there seems to just be a lack of understanding when it comes to a lot of things. On top of that, I mean, her best play would probably be to make sure Paul has to be loyal to her, to find some way to pry other potential minions like a Raven away from Paul. But now that she's had this big blow up with Jessica, I feel like she's probably going to become as fixated on Jessica as Jessica is on her. And that's going to be bad for her game, because if she starts like kind of thinking along those lines, it's hard to derail that train. You know, once you start thinking emotionally, I feel like we've seen this from Mark more than anyone. Like the first week, like he was always pretty emotional, but now that's all it is. Like once you get away from anything strategic related, it's very hard to like recenter yourself in this house where you're just be hit with like crazy opinions from all over the place. Like you don't have an opportunity to like talk to someone who's actually like a family member or something and be like, yo, wait, what are you talking about? That's crazy. Just, focus on, refocus. Nobody gets that. So as a result, you start to stray from what matters.
Yes, Melissa, we know you think Alex is the worst. What do you think about her game?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what all you guys have said. And also the fact that she's so willing to be a pawn or be put up on the block. Like the second Paul suggests it, she's like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. That's fine. And like, there's going to be that one time when she's up there on the block as a pawn and everyone's like, you know what? Let's just get rid of Alex. Like, why don't we just get rid of her? They're just going to get rid of her. I think that she's playing a very precarious game and also a very dumb game. So yeah, I'm selling Alex.
All right. Yeah. For me, there's 2 points, one in her favor, one against her. I think that she really won the affection of Matt and Raven, which is a solid win for her. They prefer her over the other two in her group. They want her in the end, even though they also like Jason and Kevin, but more her than them. And I think that's a great win for her. At the same time, I do feel like this deal with Jessica, getting Mark and Elena to put their sights on Alex, that's not good for her, especially in the short term. And I feel like that is overall it's a net negative. I feel like she's gone down a bit. I was more bullish on her last week than I am this week, so I'm a little bit down on her this week. Let's move on though to Jason. Alex, how do you feel about Jason's game this week?
He's lost points with the fans for some controversial things he said. He's not. He's made some jokes that are pretty off color, pretty distasteful, and that's not good. But in terms of like his house positioning, I think a couple things working for Jason right now, right? One, he's not engaging with all this like fighting. Like that's good. If everyone else is really like blowing up and getting heated and saying things they probably shouldn't say that like unintentionally expose their plan or their game, which is happening right now, the best players are the ones not doing that. And that's few and far between. So, like Jason and Kevin and Matt, those by default. But at the same time, he's not in any kind of a position where I think he's going to be aware if the tides turn on him. Like he strikes me as the kind of guy where the fix is going to be in and he's not going to see it until he's walking out the door. I don't have a lot of faith that he's going to develop those kind of like skills of reading people. And that's to me the biggest knock on Jason. Somehow he's had right reads sometimes, but usually just like for the wrong reasons. He's a textbook example of someone who's like sometimes like, even though the broken clock is right twice a day kind of a thing. But he really is probably good for a while. I mean, the fact that he was able to, just go through and do this competition, end up on the block, and Paul saves him anyway, like that bodes well. But ultimately, yeah, I mean, he's just not burning bridges. So I think I have to buy, whereas so many people are. Like it's a low bar, but he does clear.
Yeah, I discovered what Brent was doing when we caught him. He was actually tweeting to Davon, "Yo, Davon, your vote for Nicole is looking better all the time."
Oh my God.
Yeah. On the other hand, Davon, if you had voted for Paul like I wanted you to do at the time, I don't think I'd have to be watching this on the feeds right now. So I still kind of have your number a little bit. Okay. Okay. I'm actually, I do love that picture because I retweeted this picture of like when Julie held up the final vote for Nicole. And of course, Paul was expecting it to be Paul, and it wasn't. And Paul is incredulous that it wasn't him. And of course, I was heartbroken for him at the time. But looking back on it, because that's all I have at this point, Taran. You're taking away all I have. Okay, like that's all I have to give me my anti-Paulness that is in reality at this point.
All right. Well, how do you feel about Jason?
I feel I agree with what Alex said about him, that I like it that he's not engaging in a lot of the shenanigans that are going on the feeds right now. And ultimately, he's able to have rational conversations with people like Cody and Mark, not getting heated with them and maintaining at least cordial ties. When, if you win HOH and you have to point the shotgun at somebody, you're not going to point it at the guy who's at least being cordial to you. So I do feel like he's okay. Obviously, his performance in that bowling competition was so terrible that I don't think people are really going to fear him as far as competitions go, unless he gives them reason to. I don't like it though that he always listens to Alex as a backup. Like, he'll think something and then he'll go to Alex and she'll shoot it down. And he really should realize, yeah, I know she knows more about the game, but your instincts are actually better. And I don't think he realizes that. So on balance, I would probably buy, because I do feel like his chances are better in the game, but I do not think he can win.
Yeah, I feel like Jason and Alex, in a weird way, balance each other out just a bit, because Jason is a little bit too aggressive sometimes, and Alex is obviously a way too, just
passive.
Passive. Yeah, exactly.
Neutral.
Yeah. Yes. So, and I feel like it's worked well for the two of them. They've gotten themselves to a pretty decent spot here, but I do feel like ultimately Jason has to win out. Ultimately.
Yeah,
Alex has to capitulate to Jason at some point in order for them to be successful, because his style of thinking is the correct way of thinking down the line. And if Alex continues to prevent him from doing that, they're going to be in trouble. That said, I do really like where Jason is. He's actually probably one of my top contenders at the moment. I think his social game is working really well. As I mentioned, he's one of the few people that Cody feels like he can talk to and say, look, man, I actually really like you. I wish we could work together. That's really great for him. He still has good bonds with people like Josh. He still has a decent bond with Mark, of all people. I really like where Jason is, and I'm pretty high on him. So I'm going up.
Right. When in his conversation with Cody, it was so interesting because he did tell Cody's like, look, I didn't appreciate what you said in the veto ceremony. And Jason he's not angry about it. He's just like, look, I wanted to make sure that people knew I wasn't playing both sides. I had to state where I was unequivocally. Now, of course, I know that wasn't his true intentions. His true intentions were doing what Paul told him to do, but he's at least not getting mad with Cody. And Cody's like, look, you're going to look back on this and regret not teaming up with me at this point. But they're having rational game-related conversations, which are sorely lacking in the house at this point. So that's why I really enjoy it.
And I feel like his relationship with Kevin is going to be very valuable. I think Kevin is also a very good piece to have in this game. So I like where both Kevin and Jason are. Melissa, are you in agreement with us here? Do you like Jason's position?
Yeah, I'm totally in agreement. I think that what you guys said was totally accurate. I mean, he's making good connections with people. He's not making enemies. He also did what Paul said in a situation that doesn't really hurt him down the line, like making that speech or whatever. And so he showed them that he's loyal. He's on their side. He's going to do what they say. But at the same time, he was able to talk to Cody and just be like, look, I had to do it. I like you as a person. And I think that Cody still thinks of Jason as they have the doors open to communication between the two of them. So down the line, if he needs to work with them, he can work with them. Whereas someone like Alex, maybe not so much. So I do think that Jason's in a good place. And so I would buy Jason.
All right, let's move on to Kevin. I just talked about him. I also feel like Kevin is on the rise. Brent, do you agree?
Yes, I do agree. Somebody who just isn't, he isn't here for the drama. And when drama starts, he seems like he's the voice of reason. He's like, why do we have to do that? I don't want to do that. I don't want to be a part of it. I think Kevin's very much like me. He's a little bit old school about it. I can't believe I'm calling myself old school, but he's not here for these types of, this type of fiasco is just not something that is in Kevin's wheelhouse. And given the dynamics of the house right now, I feel like that's going to serve him well going forward. I don't think anybody fears him. I think he did that. If he did that bowling competition, his time would have been like, 25 minutes or something. So I just don't feel like anyone's going to take Kevin out until like, final 5, final 4, and maybe not even then. They might feel like he's like a James kind of guy who nobody takes seriously. But Kevin has a lot more smarts when it comes to the game than James, and he's also a lot more personable. Like, I feel like that James was sort of laughed at times. I don't feel like anybody laughs at Kevin. They laugh with Kevin, and that's a big difference.
Yeah, this might be a bit of a hot take. I feel, and I think I said this earlier in the season, but I'm feeling even better about it. I think Kevin might be the best older player archetype older character archetype player that I think we may have ever seen. Melissa, how do you feel about him?
I feel good about him. I mean, I think that somehow he's able to play all sides of the house, and no one really cares. They haven't really found him out yet, or at least like they just let it slide. So I think he's in a great position, and I think that I could definitely see him making big moves and getting pretty ruthless down the line. So I'm very excited to see what he can do.
All right, Alex, you want to cap this off?
Yeah, I touched on it a little bit, but just by default, the fact that he's not engaging in this stuff means he's ahead of the pack. I think the only thing keeping him from being my front runner to win right now is the nature of the Final 3 competition. I don't think that's suited to him particularly. But if it was, I mean, I think he's the clear front runner to win. I just keep going back to his 7 kids at home and how it's just he was already ready for all this stuff. Like, he's dealt with these stupid like squabbles over nothing because he's got a bunch of like he had 7 teenagers in the house at the same time. Like, this is nothing to him. He just walks outside and eats a sandwich and knows they'll calm down later. And he's doing great by not engaging in it. I've seen a lot of people say that, at this point you can't win the game. You can only lose. So when people are saying people aren't doing enough or aren't being entertaining, Matt or any of these people, I mean, it's that's not their job. That's not why they were put in there ultimately. I mean, that's incidental and fun if we get it, but that's not the job they were told they were going in there to do. So it's really good to see someone like Kevin, who's also able to bring like these great, entertaining moments, good sound bites. He's a great character. But also, I mean, he's doing the right things in the house. He's composed, he's level-headed, and he's doing the things that we expect from someone who's like taking the opportunity to win $500,000 seriously.
Yeah, I mean, after that big blow up a couple nights ago, Kevin was talking with basically all members involved. Like, it's gonna be great. You're gonna come to our house. You'll stay in my son's room. We've got like a pool table. It's all set up. It's gonna be great. You will all stay. For New Year's or whatever it was. Like he's totally working everyone, and he's so likable. I do agree, Alex. Though I do think the Final 3 competition, we might need to prepare ourselves for like. Oh, robbed King Kevin.
No. We will not need to prepare ourselves because, okay. Christmas is going to be there. And can you come with any sort of endurance competition or part 2 competition that Christmas is going to be able to do? I looked back at all 18 seasons of Big Brother, and I have not found one part 1 or one part 2 that Christmas would have been able to do. It's just not there. So how's she going to win? So Kevin then wins by default. And then he gets to the final 2 part 3 where it's just A or B. So come on.
All right. That's a possibility. I like both points of view. All right. Let's move on to Josh. Josh has been very busy this week. I don't know if it's been the best busyness for his game, though, Alex.
Well, I heard he broke one of the pans while we were on this show.
The pan.
Maybe he'll have to come up with a new gimmick. So, it could force him to be original. Josh is a young guy. I don't want to give him too much. I don't want to pick on him too much because he is very young and he's very sensitive and he's lived at home. Like he hasn't gotten out and seen the world yet. Like he's very sheltered, I think, in a lot of ways. But yeah, I mean, I would like to see Josh like trying to use this opportunity to grow as a person and figure out who he is rather than like just trying to emulate what he thinks, people that he knows fans have liked. I mean, for this idea that he has is misguided where he thinks like, I'm just being just like Ica. Like on many levels, you're not. And, I shouldn't need to explain why.
All right. I just got a tweet from Brendan, from the Brendan and Rachel. He said, watching Brent and Melissa bully Taran on the LFC roundtable, and Alex is just watching like Mark. # life imitating art. Great tweet by Brendan. I'm getting bullied, guys. Stick up for
Oh
me.
God.
Yeah, let's not start that again. We had to listen to that for 6 months with Alex and Jordan. I don't want to. Like they're beating a dead horse with the love tours and the bullying. Stop.
Alex is finally not bullied. We got Jordan out of here. All right, Brent, how do you feel about Josh's spot here?
Like I said previously, I really do feel like that Josh can win the game. Obviously, he's helped by the fact that it's probably going to be a 9-person jury, and only one of Cody and Jessica most likely is going to be there. But I even feel like Jessica could set aside her feelings and vote for Josh at the end if like Alex was there with him or something like that. I do feel like he has such. He's like such a kid, and that so many of his faults are forgivable. I'm with Alex on this because there are so many times where I want to criticize Josh because he doesn't like he talks big in the diary room and then he doesn't give us what he says he's going to do. He imitates other people instead of being original. All these things are true, but he does give us something. I'm not here for the 10 against 1. Like if Josh was in the spot that Jessica and Cody are in right now,
Oh my God, can you?
I don't think that he would be loving it quite so much, and it wouldn't look as good. But right now, he's a little bit of a joke, and I feel like that's why we're not able to take it as seriously. But like I said, if it was just one person that the house was doing it to, and not necessarily like a showman's that you can sort of like dehumanize, like it's us against the world kind of thing, then I feel like it wouldn't come off as well.
Yeah, I feel like there are a fair amount of people in that house who are just never going to vote for Josh in the final 2 if he's there.
All right.
It's hard.
We can disagree about that.
Well, yeah,
I feel like it's me with Karen can win the game again.
I felt that. I feel that way too. But I like, Brent, you were touching on it earlier, and I like some of the points you were making is about, Josh's relationship to Paul, and there is a lot of game left. I mean, at this point, last year, I think it was similar to like, Paul to Paulie. So, could Josh find himself in a position where he's at the end with all people that the jury hates, and then he's able to win a couple comps down the stretch? Like, you give me something to chew on there. I'll give you some respect there, Brent. That was a good point.
Yeah, I think the move for Josh in order to win the respect of the jurors is to eventually be like, you know what? Paul did put me up to that. I was his minion, but I stood up to him finally, turned around and evicted Paul, and now I'm sitting here in the final 2. I think that's the winning argument. I don't know if he's capable of it, though, so that's my only concern. Melissa, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't see Josh winning this game. I think that in terms of like the bullying stuff, I think that if it was just Josh doing his typical Josh thing, his pots and pans thing, whatever, against Cody and Jessica, I'd be like, whatever, who cares? Like, this is nothing. It's like the whole 10 versus 2 thing. That's right. Not cool. And I think that even if Paul was just sitting there yelling at Cody and Jessica, I wouldn't like it, but I wouldn't really care as much. I feel like just when people are all getting this mob mentality and they're just ganging up on these people because they feel comfort because they have other people there working with them to bully these people, that's not cool. And so Josh's behavior alone like isn't really like getting me up in arms. He's annoying. He's like, his stuff is not funny or clever or cute. It's like not great at all. It's just horrible. But I don't think he necessarily is a horrible person or anything like that. I think that he's doing it because he thinks he's getting revenge on his childhood bullies by doing this.
Yes, thank you.
And I don't think that he realizes that, like, wait, you're the bully now.
Yeah.
Like, so I don't think it's like connecting in his head. I don't think he's trying to do anything malicious or anything. I think he just doesn't get it.
Yeah, you're the hero of your own story. That's the thing.
Right, exactly.
The hero of his story, where he's like, he's gonna get the bullies, and it's revenge of the nerds all over again. But
yeah,
no,
he thinks that he's being seen as this like poor sad guy, and he's finally gonna stand up to his tormentors. When really that's not the case. But I don't see him winning. I don't see him pulling it together and creating a compelling end speech or anything like that. I think that he's going to be swift to go after some big players start leaving. So, I'm going to sell Josh.
Yeah, well, I mean, to be fair to Josh, like we said, like he is kind of seeing it. He is being like, "Wait, are we the bad guys here? Are we doing wrong?" And
Yeah.
it's really Paul who's like, no, we're totally fine. So I don't think he's like completely oblivious, but obviously he's oblivious enough that he's allowed Paul to manipulate him into thinking that what he's doing is totally fine.
Or he's
I don't think he's a total moron at all. Like, because he has had glimpses where he's been like, originally he was like, we need to get the Showmances out. We need to take this person. We need to do that thing. Like telling Alex and Jason, like, these are the things we need to do. And I was totally on board. I was like, yes, you're seeing it. Yes. So there are glimpses in there of like, he knows what he needs to do. I don't know if he knows what he needs to do now at this point, but originally when he was talking about getting out the Showmances, I was like, yes, okay. So yeah, I don't think he's a total moron when it comes to the game.
Yeah, I liked what he was doing last week when he was keeping quiet and keeping to himself. So I agree. I think I'm selling on Josh right now. I think he's in a worse spot than he was before, and I do have a hard time seeing him winning the game. So let's move on to Christmas, who just continues to be an enigma for me in terms of like how she's playing the game. Maybe it's because she's on drugs. I don't know, but she's a very uneven player. Melissa, how do you feel about Christmas?
That's tough. I really don't know because I was pretty high on her. I mean, I like the way that she was like pulling aside Jessica, and even though it wasn't truthful, I like the way that she was saying, you know, like, we're friends now. I want to work with you. I think you're great. I think that we just can't work with Cody. And if only you'd see that, like, I really like you. I think you're a great person, blah, blah, blah. And you know what? I just wanted to believe it. I was going to like suspend disbelief and just let myself accept the fact that they could have a great friendship, but whatever. It's not true. So anyway, I think that I like the way she was handling that and how she was like pulling her aside and creating these bonds with people who are outside of the Paul Alliance. And she's got this bond with Josh. I think I really like that stuff. But then today when I saw her, first of all, trying to target very personal things for Cody to try and get him to break. And then also the confrontation with Matt where she just like went kind of crazy, like kind of aggressive, super aggressive and just like 0 to 100 in like 1 second. That kind of scared me a little. And it makes me think that that's not that's not the last time we're going to see her behave like that. And I think that that's going to cause a big problem. But I guess at this point, I'm just going to like, I'm going to stay with Christmas because I don't really know how that's going to go, but I don't think Matt's taking that well. So I think that that's going to pose a problem.
She's got that house syndrome. She's cranky. Right.
Well, Matt's theory is she's just like super drugged out. Like he's like, he's like, she wasn't even looking at me when she was looking at me. Like her eyes are all glazed over. So he's chalking it up to the drugs. But yeah, I mean, if she lost faith through Matt and Raven over something as trivial as like how to go about antagonizing Cody, that's a very bad look.
Yeah, it's really, again, because I was like high on her early in the week, and then she like lost it, and I feel like that happens every week. Where I'm like, Christmas, she's doing well. She had a great conversation with Jessica, and then she totally like railed on Matt for no reason. Like again, very uneven. Brent, how do you feel?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to repeat what you guys said. A very uneven feel of her game. I have no idea what she's doing at this point. I have no idea who she's really aligned with other than maybe Josh, I feel like. But she's so in Paul's pocket. She like, it seems like that she's easily excitable to a point where like it's not predictable. Like it's okay if you have a crazy person, if you know how they're going to act when they do certain things. But Christmas is not necessarily predictable. And I feel like that's a dangerous element to have in the game of Big Brother right now.
Yeah,
even with the bump foot.
Yeah, I'll stay on Christmas as well. I feel like it's hard to judge where she's at. It's not like anyone's really targeting her anytime soon still. So I think we got to just stay with her.
And she's there for the long haul. Like I said, once she broke her foot, honey, just pencil her in for final 3. Like that's where you're going with her. That's why she should not have been allowed to stay in the game.
Although now apparently she feels like everyone has to pay a blood price because she wants to see Cody beat up Josh. So.
Yeah. All right. Let's move on to Matt. Matt, one of the few people who is voicing some concerns with this whole plan to incite Cody to violence. He seems to be one of the voices of reasons, but he does upset Christmas in that process. So maybe not the best look for his game, although, again, he is seen as one of the more reasonable people to the other side. So, Alex, how do you feel about your boy, Matt?
I mean, I think he's doing very well. Again, by default, he's not engaging in this stupid, petty nonsense, so he's doing well. But on top of that, I mean, we've just started to hear some things from him lately that make me think he's got a good mind for the game, even if he doesn't necessarily have the Big Brother knowledge. Like, he says some things that a lot of times to me, like, border on surprising because I don't expect him to have as good of a grasp as he does with some of the other things he says. Certainly when he's talking about the other night he was talking about how stupid Cody was to take Derek to the end, and that's the kind of thing that should alert you to the possibility that maybe Matt's not just playing for jury. Maybe he's fully aware that getting himself to jury is step one, and ultimately he knows better than to go to the end with someone like Paul. I would like to think that, he's learned from one of the few examples that have been laid out for him in the Cody Derek thing. And then just moving forward, he's one of the only people that's not burning bridges, right? Like, he actually has active check-ins with everyone in the house, which used to be just a foregone thing. Everyone used to do that in Big Brother. Like, that was just a basic thing you did because you never know when you might need someone's vote for what reason, and you want to make sure that there's some line of communication. And it really is crazy to me how few people have that with every single person in the house this season. It should be everybody. Instead, it's really just kind of like Matt and I guess kind of Kevin, and I mean, not many people. It's really, it's pretty startling. So I think, through that alone, I think Matt's prospects look pretty good.
Melissa,
Raven, that's his biggest potential downfall. It's Raven.
Yeah.
Being attacked.
No, I agree. I think that there were times this week when I saw Matt say certain things or talk to certain people or act a certain way that made me think that in the end run, the second half of the game, I think that we could see good things from him once the whole jury thing is settled and he can stop freaking out about making the jury. I really do think that he could actually do some good things in this game. So I'm going to buy Matt, even though normally I would not do that, but I think that I'm going to finally buy him.
Right? I think I'm buying Matt as well because I feel like he's looking good by default because everyone else is so utterly terrible and horrible at the game right now that at least Matt is cheery and likable and doesn't cause any drama. And I know that that's where you're like, Brent, you're so hypocritical. Like, you were calling him furniture last week, and he's basically the same guy. You're right, he's basically the same guy. But right now, the house is being terrible right now. So of course Matt looks good, and on a purely game level, I don't see anyone coming after him because he just is such a sweet guy. It just would not behoove you to do that for your game right now.
Yeah, he might be furniture, but he's like one of those lazy boys with like the lifetime warranty. Like, he's very, very sturdy in there. Not going anywhere anytime soon.
Yeah, I think that not only is his position good right now in terms of being furniture is good in a house full of insane people, but I do still think there's a possibility that he just really turns it up come jury, that he changes up his game and he starts.
Here's hoping.
He keeps talking in the DR. He said a ton of times when he finally got some DRs, I'm a team player. I did this because I'm a team player and I had to do this for my team. Hopefully he looks at this like Survivor and he looks at the jury as like the merge and it's now an individual game and he starts playing that way. If he does, I think we got some potential in Matt.
Really ask really quickly, Alex, this is a friend of a friend, obviously. Have you talked to your friend and said, like, how much Big Brother had he watched? Like, has he watched any Survivor? Does he understand?
Not much.
Does he understand what he needs to do when the time comes?
I don't know that Pat knows really.
Right.
I don't know that we have much insight. I mean, he was recruited. We know he watched a couple seasons of Big Brother. I wouldn't expect him to have much in the way of like precedental insight, like things he can cite as examples of what to do and what not to do. I just think the thing that seems to be working for him right now is just a generally good demeanor, like a willingness to just kind of go with the flow. And just honestly, I mean, by default, he really is just kind of benefiting from everyone else's mistakes. If he keeps doing nothing and everyone else keeps sabotaging themselves, he's going to be fine.
All right, let's move on to Raven, who, Raven, who all of a sudden, just before we started this podcast, went absolutely nuts. Melissa, you were saying she is also the worst. How do you feel about her game?
Sorry, which one? I was just checking the feed.
That's okay. So all three of us have been nailed now. I love it.
Everybody gets one.
What happened on the feed? We were talking about Raven, but what happened on the feeds that you were watching that you were so enthralled by? Because I turned it off.
Oh
'cause
no,
can't
I
do
was
it.
just checking.
Okay.
I was just checking updates to see if there was anything going on.
Okay. We were talking about
But
Raven and how.
currently, the only discussion is really just like, oh, is Jessica and Cody gonna walk
Yeah.
or whatever? So.
Well, I'll take it really quickly about Raven. Like, I feel like, I mean, look, on a game level, I feel like she's also did herself a disservice this week because before, I feel like that maybe people would evict Matt because they would fear him more. But I feel like now, if she's on the block with Matt, people are going to look at her and want to get her out. Like, they're like, you know, let's keep the nice guy in the house. Let's get rid of the crazy person who's always talking about her 2 hearts and her 2 terminal diseases and her 8 problems. Like, I mean, let's get this person out of the house. And she's not being very charming right now. It's so amazing to me because she's being duplicitous behind their back. But then she's acting like she's totally blameless. And the house knows that she's being duplicitous. Like, she really is talking bad behind Jessica and Cody's back. But then she's acting like this to him. So if they're seeing, like, it's like, I'm hoping that the people watching on the sides are looking at Raven going how she's acting with Jessica and Cody, knowing that Raven's lying and thinking to themselves, you know what, I need to hold on to that for the future for when she does it to me.
What other extra organs do you think she smuggled into that house?
Alex,
Well, it sure wasn't 2 brains, that's for sure.
Like 4 cow stomachs and like whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, no, Raven is just like, I think that this fight, this big blow up is not going to look good for Raven. I think that people will keep this in mind and be like, even people who don't know that she's being duplicitous, I think that they'll be like, huh, like, that's kind of very different than the Raven that we've been seeing in the house this whole time. Like, I didn't know Raven could get like that. I thought she was just a sweet, nice girl. So from now on, I think when she tries to play up that I'm just a sweet, nice Southern belle, people are going to be like, yeah, right. We've seen what you're really like.
You dropped the C word the other day, you.
Yeah, you dropped the C word. Like, that's intense. So yeah, I don't think that this week is good for Raven at all. I think that she is going... She's been exposed finally in the house and kind of outside of the house. So yeah, I'm selling Raven.
Yeah,
get her out of here.
Also,
I completely agree with Brent as well, where I think she goes before Matt. And I can also see a scenario where somebody like Jessica or Cody puts up Paul next to Raven thinking, here's a slam dunk. And then Raven goes home that way because I also think she goes before Paul. So I actually think she's in some danger in the short term as well. I think her stock is crashed this week. I think it's in a really bad spot here. So sell on Raven.
That would just make too much sense too, because Jess and Cody aren't ever allowed to get a target out on their HOH.
Exactly.
I think we should have that's like that's going to be a commandment of this season, I think.
All right, let's move on to Elena, who's had a bit of a quiet week in the last few days, at least. She's had a lot of conversations with Mark, but she's been working hard to reintegrate with Paul in that group. Brent, do you think she's been successful, and do you think it's good for her game?
Yeah, I think she's been successful-ish. I mean, you know, like there's at least 3 targets in front of her right now, and she has been willing to listen to Paul and to do what he asks of her. And she has some really nice moments with Josh. By the way, Josh is like Team Elena at this point. Like once he realized that Mark and Elena weren't involved anymore, Josh was telling Kevin about it. Josh loves Elena. He thinks that she's so hot and he's so into her. And I know there are people who tweeted me and said, like, I'm pretty sure Josh is gay. I'm like, he's not gay, okay? He's just a little Cuban and feisty. Like, he loves Elena. He really does. He thinks and the feelings that he has for Elena, I never had once in my life about any girl whatsoever. So I know he's into this girl.
If you listen to the Taran show, you know this.
I know, right? So, like, he really does have a great relationship with her. And I feel like that will serve her well down the line. I actually went to bed before the DR gave them, because Josh went in and tried to take her 2 weeks of being a have-not. Whatever happened with that? Do we know? Because I went to bed and I never saw it again. So
she
I don't
got
think
the
he did
bad
that.
one.
Huh?
I don't
She's
think
gonna
he
be
took
have-not
hers.
again.
I don't think he took hers.
Well, Josh said he was going to take her 2 weeks of being a have-not. He went to the DR to ask if he could do it instead. You see what I'm saying? Yeah.
I also think that his, love of Elena is definitely influencing his beef with Mark. I think that that's a huge part of it. He can say all he wants. It's the pickle juice. It's whatever. But it's definitely because he feels like Mark stole Elena away from him. And now that if he can get Mark out of the house, then, he has Elena all to himself. And I think that that's a total influence for him.
I think that's how he felt about Jessica at first until he realized he had no shot. Like, he was antagonizing Cody real hard. And I think he thought maybe like he could get in there, but
Yeah, no way.
Well, it's funny.
No, that door is closed.
Whenever there's like an unexplained beef, like Josh, who just like randomly hates Mark so much, and it's like you think it's because of the hot sauce in the face, but there was something else underlying it there, like sort of like with Meech and Frank in last year, where it's like there's always just a little bit something under the radar there, and it's kind of as soon as Elena said, yeah, me, Mark and I we're kind of done, and he was like, oh, hey, beautiful, how's it going? So yeah, Elena, I feel like she was in a bit of a tricky spot last week. We weren't sure what her fate was going to be, being not on the inside with the Ramses vote. I think she's done a decent job reintegrating herself. I think she's in good with both sides at the moment. I think her worst case scenario is something funky with the temptation, competition, immunity, and veto. If like all of a sudden Cody and Jess and Mark are all immune, then she is in a lot of trouble. I think that's going to be hard to achieve, but at the same time, this is a tricky thing to navigate, this new temptation competition. So I think I'm a little bit up on where Elena was. I do think she has a chance, especially if Cody and Jess and Mark are all targeted ahead of her. I think she has a lot of time to reintegrate again and get in and be, again, Paul's like secret weapon here if Paul stays on the in control of things. So I'm a little high on Elena from last week. Alex, do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, because she hasn't like lost her cool about being left out on the vote, and I think that was the big concern coming into this week, is that she was left out to dry, and she could have easily found herself in a position where she's kind of, you know, I mean, that could have gone any number of ways. People react terribly to when they're not included in on the plan that they thought they were in on, and so I think she handled it and reintegrated herself as best she could. There's going to be a lot of scenarios where, you know, even if the people that were her people are targeted, she's going to be okay. And I have a feeling other things are going to blow up that she's not going to be like directly at the center of, that's going to, you know, propel her forward for a little while. I do feel good about her long-term chances in the game. I just, you know, I think it's a big red flag that Paul can, you know, pull the wool over her eyes all last week. And then she can go back to Paul. Like, that doesn't necessarily mean she's like doomed in the game, but it is something that you worry about. Like, even if they got rid of Paul, would Elena find herself then kind of playing second fiddle to someone else? And at some point you have to be able to take the reins and, you know, make this game your own. And we just need to see that from her, I guess.
Yeah, and here's my hope for Elena, because she had a conversation with Jessica where Jessica pointed out a lot of things about Paul. Like, he is in charge of everything. You got to watch out for Paul. He is your biggest threat in this game. And she went and she told Paul about that conversation, but she did leave some things out in terms of how much they talked about Paul. And if Elena can walk the tightrope of keeping Mark as an ally, but separating herself from him, appearing loyal to Paul, keeping Jess and Cody from targeting her, using them as shields essentially that can target that other side, while appearing loyal to Paul, that is a great spot to be in, because she can then come out of nowhere and be like, actually, I thought the same as them, but you thought I didn't think the same as them. That's where she should be. I think she is still a bit too loyal to Paul, but I do see a glimmer of hope there in that conversation where she didn't reveal all of the details. Brent, how do you feel about it?
Yeah, that was actually one of my favorite Elena moments of the season, was when she went to Paul and did not tell everything. She definitely left some parts out. And I was like, I don't know if she's doing it just to avoid the drama of it all, or if she actually is listening to Jessica a little bit here. But I'm hoping that her eyes are open. I'm trying to like think back, and maybe you guys can help me. Like in the previous seasons of Big Brother, when people have been specifically left out of plans, when you were left out of the majority alliance and blatantly lied to, like Elena was, like, are you able to then trust the person who really pulled the wool over your eyes again? Can you reunite with them and then like start to run the game again? Like, I'm sure it's happened a couple of times, but it's not very often. You have to think like you're on the outs here. And I think part of it is that they don't want to admit that. But I do agree with you overall. I think like she's target number 3 or 4. And by the time like we go forward in time and get a couple of those targets out, I feel like the game will have changed by then, and they're not going to be necessarily looking at Elena.
Yeah, I mean, I think of Survivor Second Chances, when Steven Fishback leaves Kid, what's his name?
Spencer? What?
Spencer. Yeah.
Kid.
Steven leaves Spencer out of the
Kid.
plan pre-merge and to blindside Monica, I believe. And then Spencer pretends to be okay with it, and then later on in the merge, he comes back at Steven and gets him out. Steven later cites that as probably a mistake. He probably should have kept Spencer in the loop on that vote, because it really erodes the trust. And if Elena can do the same thing, where she's like, you know, that really did kind of set me off the wrong way, but I'm going to pretend to be okay with it and keep that in my back pocket. Like Alex said, you can complain about it in the DR all you want, but keep pretending. And that's what Dr. Will did. That's the OG play, is to pretend you're okay with it, get your revenge later on. We hope that Elena will do that, but I'm not super confident. Melissa, how do you feel?
Yeah, I mean, if Elena is doing this, that's going to be awesome and amazing. But we don't know for sure if that really is her intention and if she actually is like kind of playing Paul in this situation. But because we have no proof of it. I mean, who she's going to tell, really? She doesn't really trust anyone anymore. So, yeah, I'm very hopeful for Elena, and I kind of want to just like keep that hope alive. But I'm not positive, but I think that her social skills are super helpful. So I feel like I could see her getting out of a sticky situation using just pure social ability. So I would buy Elena, I think.
Yes, I'm on board. I think we're all on board. We're buying Elena a bit here. So let's move on finally to Mark, who he's set his flag down on Cody's soil. He's willing to go down with the ship, it seems like. Brent, how do you feel about Mark's play here?
Not great, although I do like it from a feed standpoint.
Yeah.
I love it that Jessica and Cody have, at least one person in the house that could feasibly win HOH. And of course, Paul has convinced himself that if Mark won HOH out of the blue, that Mark would not be quote unquote stupid enough to go after somebody in the house. He would go after Cody and Jessica. And I know that Mark would not do that. He'd face a lot of pressure from Paul. But I actually think it's great for Mark's game that Elena has sort of distanced herself, because now like her pull over Mark won't be quite the same as maybe it would have been if they had stayed together. So from a game standpoint, I feel like there are too many people that dislike Mark, but he doesn't really get mad at people. Like, other than that time he charged Josh, which he was really provoked into doing, says here. I feel like he's a sweet guy and he's very agreeable with people. He doesn't get mad at people. Even when Alex is going after him on the feeds an hour ago, like, he's really just sort of like, he's not a great arguer, so he just sort of like, has his mouth open and is like, oh, I can't convey it on a podcast, but he doesn't argue with people well. So actually, even though it's not a great quality to have in life, I feel like in the house, it's probably going to work for him, but I'd still probably sell him because I just feel like there are too many people that are anti-Mark at this point. Alex is anti-Mark, Josh, Paul, even Elena doesn't really care for him because she thinks he's dragging her down. So I'd sell.
You said Alex is anti-Mark, and I was like, Alex doesn't like Mark? Alex, do you not like Mark?
Too many Alexes.
Yeah,
I do like
Alex,
the people. I forget. I didn't see who coined it, but I've seen people have taken to calling him the Incredible Sulk, and I like that a lot.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. How do you feel about his game?
It's not great. I mean, I do feel like coming from, because I think, he's really trying to hold it back a lot of the time, but there just comes a point where he just can't take any more of Josh's ridiculousness. And like, to be fair, Josh, like, he is scared of Mark. Like, you saw it as soon as Mark approached him. Like, Josh backed up real quick. I'm scared of Mark too. Mark's a big guy. Like, that's totally fair to be scared of Mark, but I also wouldn't go around pushing his buttons, because like, that's sometimes when you play with the bull, you get the horns, as what's his name? That principal in Breakfast Club like to say.
All right, Melissa, how do you feel?
I agree with everybody else. I think that he's, I like the fact that Mark is joining up with Cody and Jess, but I don't know if that's necessarily good for him. And I feel like a lot of people are against him. So in the situation where potentially Jess and Cody are both safe somehow, I could see him being the next best option.
Yeah, I feel like he's too emotional. He's too attached to Elena, too focused on Elena, and he really, I mean, he's trying. You got to get. He went on an apology tour. He's trying to communicate, but he just you can see it in his face when these fights are breaking out. He wants to support Cody and Jessica. He wants to back them up. He ends up getting in trouble for not speaking up against them. It's just not in him to play the other side in the way that Elena is able to do. And that's going to come back and bite him, especially, again, with this temptation twist. He could easily be a secondary target if the other two get immune, or even if one of them gets the immunity.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So down on Mark here, and that is our Stockwatch. We got through it all. That was a good one. Deep dive there. I thought we got some good analysis. But let's get into some questions. I have one from Joe H, who asks, at this point, isn't it better for Paul if Cody stays? He'll always be a force that Paul can use to hold his alliance together. Alex, I saw you saying this was a great question on Twitter. So what's your answer?
Well, it's a great question for the LFC Roundtable, because like it's a really like minutia type of thing to discuss, right? Like most Big Brother podcasts don't have the time to get into the idea of, would it possibly be better, like these bizarro world scenarios? Should Paul keep his worst enemy and stuff? The kind of conversations that, like, when they happen on a season that's very strategic, where like a lot of people are thinking on many levels, like I don't know, the last one I can think of is like Big Brother Canada 4, where Mitch was talking about like keeping the targets to go after each other and staying in the middle with a middle alliance and this kind of stuff. Like those are the conversations I really love to have. Those are the conversations I think this show is kind of perfect for, because we really do get into the nuance and stuff. So, I mean, that's where I was coming from with all that. But, I love these thoughts. Like, I don't know if I've really given it enough thought yet to have a take on it one way or another. I like the idea. I just don't know if you can go about executing it without losing all your people.
Yeah, I was just going to say really quickly, I don't think that it's necessarily good for his game, because you have to move the game forward. Nothing's happening here if nobody goes home. So, I mean, like, it's not like somebody else goes home and Cody stays. I mean, if Paul realized, and this is not true right now, but if Paul realized that he was on the outs and that the zombies were waking up and he was in trouble, I feel like he would want to keep somebody like Cody and Jessica in the house, because they would be good people to team up with. Paul would be willing to set that aside and team up with anybody to try to save his game. Like, he's that kind of a game player. But Paul has control of the house right now, and I don't see that changing. So I do feel like that he needs to get rid of Cody for Paul's game to improve.
Yeah, I think there's a way to play this where you are able to keep Cody in the house. But the problem is Cody is particularly single-minded, especially when it comes to Paul. Even that week where Paul was able to slide by and prevent himself from being targeted when Jess was HOH, Cody was still talking about going after Paul the following week. There's no way you're ever going to get Cody to be on board with not targeting you, and he's too good at competitions to leave in the house. Melissa, do you agree here? It's just he has to get him out?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's a good idea to have someone else be a target, but I think Paul's ability to make anybody, even his friends, a target, I think that he'll feel like he doesn't need Cody to be an actual target. I think like to be an actual enemy. I think that if he can just do what he's been doing, which is like completely isolate someone from his own alliance and make everybody think that they're the enemy all of a sudden, and then everybody around them is cowardly and says, well, as long as it's not me, then that's Paul doesn't need Cody. He can just do that with his own alliance.
Yeah, good point. I think Paul really he gets people to be targets. He doesn't need to keep this particular one in. Well, so let's move on.
Well, those are the moments though, right, where like the big nerd in me wishes they would like give them all like the art of war, the laws of power, and sequester. But then I remember that they wouldn't even read it anyway. So
yeah, maybe if they got an audio
what they need to do is have like a veto competition where they have to like give their true answers, like, a Survivor thing, like a pecking order challenge, where that would reveal like the pecking order in the house, like, and who you really like and who you dislike, who you respect, who you don't respect. I don't know if that it would work really well with like Cody and Jessica in the house, because I think everybody would just vote for Cody and Jessica on everything that was like a bad question. But maybe there's a way they could do something like that. That would be really fun. Like in Big Brother Canada, Jordan season, where they had them line up from who you thought was most likely to win the game to least likely to win the game. And the house had to decide it. I feel like that these are interesting exercises that cause people to think and get out of the group think cult mentality that they're in right now.
Well, talking about Survivor Marquesas, you mentioned that was the first time the minions rebelled, and it was for that reason. So, good call.
Actually, now that I think about it, though, I would like to see the Art of War actually in the house, because then we could get live feeds of Josh like, the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
I don't understand.
Well, talking about who we think has the best shot to win, we have a question from Peter on Twitter who asks, can you guys give your top 3 choices for who you think will win the game? I'll give mine first to give you guys some time to think. But I think mine are Jason, Kevin, and Matt. Honestly, I think Paul is up there, but I feel like this week was just really bad for him. So I'm not sure I can include him in my top 3. I think those 3 are my choices for now. Alex, how do you feel?
Stole my 3. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to come off as sexist, but I do feel like those 3 guys are just, doing a very good job. I mean, until today, I might have, put Christmas in that category to a degree. I don't know where she was coming from today. I think she's safe for a long time, but again, like, to win the game, it's going to be very, very borderline impossible. So.
Yeah, I don't agree. I think that my top 3 to win the game would be Elena, Josh, and Kevin. And I just feel like that in order to win the game of Big Brother, like, you have to have a little bit of a personality. You can't be as bland as Matt. I feel like that they're not really going to want to vote for Matt at the end. Like, I mean, you have to have a little spunk, a little something. And I feel like those 3 people have it. You either have it or you don't, and Matt don't have it. So
what did Drew Daniel have, Brent?
I'm on board with Elena, but I just can't see Josh. Melissa, how do you feel?
I really want to see Josh go to the end just so I can get this question answered.
I want to see him win HOH at some point.
Yeah, that would be really fun. My 3 would probably be Elena, Paul, and Matt.
There you go. Pretty even spread there. So I think around like those 4, Matt, Elena, Jason, and Kevin, I feel like are probably the top 4 contenders here at the moment. All right, let's move on to Gonzalo Palma on Twitter, who asks, if Paul is due for a downfall, in how many weeks do you think it's happening? I give it 3 weeks, he says. Brent, how many weeks do you feel like until Paul's big blow up, like the Pauly blow up?
I mean, I feel like if it's gonna happen, it needs to happen relatively soon, because I feel like once Paul gets to like final 6, final 5, I don't think you can take him out. I think all those competitions are gonna favor him. No one's gonna beat him in anything that they could do at the final 5 and beyond. So it has to happen within the next 3 weeks, and we know that we're gonna get a double eviction sometime in there somewhere, maybe 2 this season. I don't know. It just depends. But we'll get at least 1. And so I do think that his downfall will happen. It's very Pauly-esque. It just feels like, because remember, I always go back to this. We were getting questions last season like, if Pauly wins, is he one of the top 10 players to ever play the game? And now look at how we think of him. Like, seriously, there's so much game to be had. Like, we're not even in the middle yet.
Should have just been saying, I just want to get to jury, eh?
Yeah,
I've screened lots of those questions about Paul this season, so people do feel very similarly. But yeah, I feel like there are two dangers to Paul's game right now. One is it's going to be very tough to get Cody and Jessica out in the coming weeks with the temptation competition, the veto, and all of that. They're so good at competitions. If one of them wins HOH once, he can be in a lot of trouble. I feel like he could lose that way. And then I also feel like if he does spend a lot of energy and effort getting them out, by the time he does get them out, the other people like Jason and Kevin, who have been talking about maybe we need to turn on Paul eventually, will be like, all right, now's our time to strike. He just wasted all of his energy and momentum taking these people out. Now we take him out and we're in charge of the game all of a sudden.
Yeah, this week is I think Eric Stein had it right. Like, we're going to look back at this week that Paul decided to win HOH when he didn't need to, decided to win veto when he really didn't need to, and look at it as the beginning of the end for Paul, because he has just burnt so much energy. He's been in the limelight. He's been running the show. He's been putting plans together. And for what? For nothing. Nothing's going to happen this week unless Cody actually walks out. But there's no way that Jessica's not going to use the hex, if not only to save Cody, but to save herself. So, yeah. I mean, like, nothing's going to happen this week. And I feel like you put yourself on the limelight and brought all this attention on you for no reason whatsoever.
All right, final question from Brian, who asks, what odds do you put on Jessica and Cody being portrayed as the heroes this week? Melissa, how do you feel about this?
100%.
130%.
130%. No, definitely. Are you kidding me? Of course they're going to be the heroes. Like, I mean, also, like, there's no real other way to portray this. Like, even if they show exactly what happened, they just play the live feeds for the whole episode. They were the heroes of this. I mean, not like heroes, but I mean, they were being bullied. They were having people attack them. So
they're
there's
the
really no way to spin it.
Yeah,
they're the undercats. And America loves a good undercat.
Alex, is there any devil's argument here?
I mean, maybe just in the sense that, like, I mean, I guess they could emphasize certain things. I mean, they could talk about how, like, I mean, you know, at the end of the day, it is like, you know, these people who were terrible being mean to these other people who've been terrible. So there's ways to spin it so that it's not so cut and dry, but they do seem to like to create these kind of like black and white dichotomies in the storytelling of the episode. So I would be surprised if it's not leaning that way, if we don't get more kind of diary rooms from Jessica that are kind of tearful and remorseful and like questioning and those kinds of things that make you want to sympathize with her. And then the contrast, we're getting stuff from like Paul and Josh talking about how they're trying to, you know, break them down and they'd like to see them like at their lowest. I think that to be expected. And it's the only way that can go is to see the audience be like, well, I didn't like the way they said that at all.
Yeah, I think be on the lookout to see production plant their flag here. I remember there was a distinct moment when they turned on Paulie and they just buried him immediately. And we could see that happen to Paul here. But, you know, it could also theoretically happen to Cody. I think it'll happen to Paul, though. I think this is going to be the turning point for Paul. They're going to finally bury him. He's going to be the villain of the season. And yeah, people might remember last season as instead of Paul got robbed, like, thank God Nicole won. Who knows?
Yeah, thank you, Davon Rogers. We love you.
All right. So that is our roundtable show. Let me know if you have any ideas for a hashtag in the chat room or if any of you three have any ideas. Anyone have any final thoughts as well?
No, other than like, I mean, it's like I said, for a quote unquote dud week, like this has been really, really fun. I haven't had so much fun like watching the feeds in such a long time. Some of the things that are happening on the feeds, I don't really enjoy. Like they go a bridge too far from what I enjoy from my big brother. But on the other hand, at least it's not just sheep marching to the end. I feel like there are some dynamics in the house that are happening right now that Paul is not in control of. And I don't know who it was on a podcast who said that Paul enjoys the chaos, but I feel like this is too much chaos for him. And I don't feel like it's good for his game. And I do feel like the end is coming for him.
Yeah, I think there's a big distinction between him, you know, being the orchestrator of the chaos and stirring it up while being somewhat removed from it, and him being at the very center of it right now, where he's caught up in it emotionally just the same as everyone else. And he's clearly like, watch the feed. I mean, he's saying things that he really shouldn't be saying. If people are listening, they're going to start to pick up on the fact that like the things he's saying in a joking manner, like, oh yeah, it's so funny. You guys are all just my loyal pets and we're just going to the end. Like,
yeah, don't put that out there.
Why does he keep harping on that? I wonder why. Why is that such a big deal to him? Why does that bother him so much? Like, these are the questions you don't want people asking.
Yeah. Shout out to the chat room. They had a particularly fun time doing this roundtable podcast. We've got two suggestions for the hashtag: hot mess or incredible sulk. How do you guys feel?
That always gets me.
Yeah, incredible sulk always gets me too. I agree.
All right, let's go with that then. We'll do hashtag incredible sulk. Make sure you are on the lookout for our live update tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Eastern. We will also be live after the Wednesday night episode to recap that. We will be in New York Thursday night to talk about the eviction episode with Johnny Mac and Eric Stein live in New York. Alex and I will also be there. That'll be a lot of fun. And also, I talked to Big Brother 14 winner Ian Terry for episode 3 of the Taran Show. Had an awesome conversation with him, all about, you know, like what is it like to be this young kid that walks out of a Big Brother house. You're just on television. You've got a ton of people talking about you, and now all of a sudden you've got $500K in the bank. And what do? You got all this attention. You were an introvert. How does that affect you? I
want to know about the girls. How many girls threw yourself at?
Oh, we talked about the girls. Yeah, he got some advice from Rob Sesternino that he didn't exactly follow.
Okay.
Yes, that's a teaser. All right, so check that out. It'll be coming out in the morning on Tuesday. We'll get it out as early as possible, so be on the lookout for that. And then also we've got some American Ninja Warrior podcasting heading your way as well. So yes, Lots of good stuff. And of course, check out But First, a Big Brother 2 documentary. Lots of fun there.
It's like an infomercial. Like you have to plug all your shit.
Yeah, there's a lot of
You
stuff.
have like a laundry list this long.
Like 5 minutes
I
now.
love it.
There's literally a big bullet point list. Well, of course, check out Game of Thrones. They do the
Oh my
know-it-alls
God.
afterward, and then the deep dive. There's a lot of good Game of Thrones coverage happening as well. So lots of stuff for you to check out. Lots of content coming your way. So thank you so much for joining us. I am at Armstrong Taran on Twitter. Alex is at Alex Kidwell. Brent is at One Lucky Gay, and Melissa is at It's Melissa with 3 A's. So for Melissa, Alex, and Brent, I am Taran Armstrong. #Incredible Sulk. We will see you next time.